Hello and welcome to the TTRPG Super-Stream. This is our yearly role-playing game fundraiser. This year we are raising money for the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund. This is a day of live-streamed role-playing games, raising money for a good cause. You can find links to donate in the chat. You can find the QR code in the middle of the screen. There are links abound. It should be easy to find one. At me on Twitter if you can't find it. I'll be around all day. But we are playing some fun superhero-themed games today, and I am sitting down with genuinely three of my favorite people in this world to sit. Well, two of them and my bitterest enemy that I have had in this life. That I'm excited to sit down and shoot the shit about Superman with. So I guess let's go ahead and dive in, because we are playing legitimately my favorite role-playing game, which is KUBRICK, a post-adaptation role-playing game by Rufus. And so I've got three of my dear friends, and I'm gonna throw it over first off to my dear friend and my hated enemy, Viditya. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm glad that you clarified, because I was like, don't lie to the people, Jeff.
No,
don't
you're right.
lie to the people
You're
in
right.
front of me.
I didn't want to present the image of a happy family.
No.
They need to know the drama that's going on.
There's strife here for sure. Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Viditya Valetti. I use he him pronouns. I'm a game designer in the space, and I like making games, and I make good ones that you can find at vidityavaletti.itch.io. I'm so bad at doing these.
I think you hit all of the things.
I think I hit all of the things. Yeah. Check out my fun games like Blood Bean Badlands and Space Between Stars and
Space Between Stars.
Space Goblins. Yeah.
Hey man, did you know that I really like the game Space Between Stars? Is that a thing that you knew?
Wow, Chad, is this the first time you've ever told me this? I'm not sure.
I'm blown away. Yes. I really like that game. So moving along, Rufus, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to be here playing my own game on stream.
I'm excited to be doing this. What do you got going on you want the audience to know about?
I actually don't have really much going on right now. I'm kind of in like a lull. I've taken a year off of like writing basically anything to just like take care of myself and read a lot of books and do some research. And I mean, I've written a lot of stuff for myself, but hopefully this next sort of like summer 2023 to summer 2024 is gonna have a ton of stuff for me coming out. I just don't have information on when things are gonna be coming out enough to say anything about them. But
also,
if you like to,
like, taking time off for yourself is a thing that is admirable and important, and I am glad to know that is a thing that is happening, because like I think that we could all use it, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm coming up on the tail end of it. Like I'm this month, like I kind of like woke up one day and I was like, okay, I'm fucking like chomping at the bit to like get back to creating things. But like I needed that year. Like I needed it so bad.
There is something beautiful about that feeling, right? There's something beautiful about that feeling of like, I've been away for a while. I'm finally feeling like I want to be doing the thing again. And like, that is something that like takes active work to kind of get back to that point once you've lost it. But it is a feeling that like I count as one of my favorite feelings in the world.
Yeah, it's honestly really exciting to have like be like, oh, actually I have like energy and ideas again, and like a desire to be like engaging with my old games and updating them, and like thinking back on my previous work and how to like bring that forward into new ways. Like it's really, really exciting. It's also a little frustrating because I'm like having to like shake off the rust of a year.
Sure.
And like there are bad habits I've had in last year. Not bad habit. I don't want to call them bad habits, but like you do forget how to apportion your time.
Sure, absolutely.
100%. And how to like hold a flame of an idea until it's finished.
Yeah.
And those things are like things I'm having to come back to slowly. But like the get up and go is back, baby.
I'm glad to hear this. This makes me very, very happy. And finally we've got Adira. Adira, how are you doing? I'm so happy to have you here. What do you got going on you want the audience to know about?
Yeah, hi, I'm Adira Slattery. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a game designer. You can find me all sorts of places at Adira Slattery on Twitter. Get my games at Adira.io. You can just Google Adira Slattery. Try to find furry porn of me cowards. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. As far as like stuff I got going on, I released a game almost a year ago that is the last game that I released on itch right now. I've been like working on like a bunch of like big things. I actually have a thing that I've been like working on that I'm like under NDA for, and it like might even have come out by the time that this is shown to people. And if it is, go to my Twitter. I'll be yelling about it there. But yeah,
I hope it is. I hope people can go to your Twitter and find out about it, because that is a cool, exciting thing. And you mentioned that briefly before we got on camera, and I got hyped hearing about it. So I am going to be watching very carefully to see when it comes out, so I can scream about the cool shit that my friend Adira does.
Yes, but also for in case anyone who could legally sue me is watching, I did not mention anything about what the project actually was.
No,
Jeff just hyped because he's a polite person.
I'm hyped because I hear my friends be like, I'm working on an NDA thing, and I go, oh my god, my friend is working on a thing cool enough to have an NDA. That's a cool fact about my dear friend.
But yeah, the last game I released on itch is this game Cars that I'm really proud of.
Cars rules.
That I like. Yeah. And like yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Just vibing, being in Chicago, rolling around.
We're all vibing, and I appreciate this. I'm appreciating that
rolling around.
There's a vibing energy to the game today. There's a vibing energy to what we're all bringing to the stream today, and like I appreciate it because truly, I did say this to you all before I hopped on. This is a thinly veiled excuse to sit down with three people that I really like and talk about the topic of Superman, like at a high level. And these are both things that, and you know, sometimes we arrange the projects that we work on to have an excuse to sit down with people that we care about and just like riff on a thing for 3 hours. And that's about what we're going to be doing today. So, we are playing KUBRICK, and this is a game about adapting a piece of media into a new format. We are going to be taking some existing media, in this case, the stories and imagery and films and comics and cartoons of Superman, and using that to tell a new story today. The four of us are going to riff on this thing. We are going to kind of break down what we like about the source text, what we don't like about the source text, what frustrates us about popular presentations of it. And we are going to create beat by beat, like a new version of this story that involves the things that we want it to, and that we like tells the story that we want to see with these characters and these themes. And did I miss anything? That's the Rufus that I miss? Is that pretty much the pitch in a nutshell?
Yeah, I mean, KUBRICK is about like sitting down and going through at both like a really detailed level and a much larger level, just like how we are interacting with media that somebody else has created, but that like we feel strongly about. And there's not really, it's like, it is a structure. It sort of like gives you the tools to guide how you are thinking about deepening your thoughts on media, and how you are thinking about the like directorial position. But it's, at the end of the day, it's like guidelines and tools to have a conversation,
right?
And so we're vibing.
So we're here today to talk about Superman because it is technically Superman Day on the day of this recording. I have my Superman necktie on, which I love dearly. And so to begin, like traditionally we are supposed to pick a source text, and I kind of, this is my opportunity to start the conversation with a high level riff of like what media pops into your head when you think about Superman, whether that is a thing that you love or a thing that you hate with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns. Like what are the media sources in particular that pop into our heads that we're riffing on? What are the and then as a broader level, what are the, you know, what brings each of you to the character, what's in your head, and what kind of stuff do we really want to be playing around with before we kind of dig into breaking down plot and characters and feelings and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I have a quick answer off the top of my head,
Please.
and I think that this makes me a fake Superman fan. I say that jokingly. But the Superman media that I've always like hewn closest to or like know the best is actually the Smallville TV show.
Yeah.
And I
So deeply valid is the thing.
Yeah.
and I there's some fucking missteps in that show. There's some big ass like pits that they don't even try to go around, they just drive straight into. But like I don't know, for me, like my understanding of like Superman is always better rooted in Clark Kent than it is in Superman. And that show is the kind of the show that gives us the most Clark Kent. Like it is
for sure,
it is Clark Kent from top to tail.
Yeah.
And I love the cheesy melodrama of it.
Yeah.
And I've always, my favorite, like one of the reasons I come to superhero stuff is I love the secret identity thing. Like
Sure.
I love the like my friend is secretly an alien. Right? Like and like the almost the like looking at the character from the outside in rather than the inside out. And being like what are these things that make him stand out and make him different? And what are these things that make him like just our friend Clark Kent?
Yeah, for sure.
You know? And I really love that show as a portrayal of like the root of Clark Kent and like what makes him good.
I think it captures that very, very well. The thing about there's one moment in Smallville that is burned so deeply in my brain, and it is one of my favorite media moments of all time. And it is that in one of the very late seasons of Smallville, they have the character of Lois Lane fall out of a window dramatically, and she is plummeting to the ground as we have seen in 1,000 Superman stories. And there is a swoosh of wind, and the music swells, and she is held in the arms and carried to safety by Hawkman.
What?
And like,
what?
I think about this so often, where they're just like,
they've denied you.
And then Hawkman lands and is like, here's my friends, all of the Justice Society. And Clark is like, I don't know about this. I feel like I might have to become a superhero looking at these Justice Society guys.
Oh my god.
Guess I'm going to become the Blur.
And Smallville has what the CW shows wanted.
Yeah, for sure. They could, no 12 seasons of Arrowverse shows could match the power that like late season Smallville, when everything that had happened in Superman's life happened before he became Superman. Doomsday has punched him to death, and he's come back to life as Clark Kent and gone, maybe I should become Superman.
And the other thing I fucking love about that show is it has made me incapable of viewing Lex Luthor as a villain.
Fair, correct,
like,
valid.
Yeah. I cannot like I've read one too many Smallville fan fictions to ever see him as anything other than that.
That is so valid.
Yeah, Lex Luthor's a weird little bald man who wants to kiss.
Yes, that's exactly what he is. Like he is just like an angry young man who never grew out of the teen angst phase because he was not taught emotional intelligence.
Oh my god.
For sure.
Oh, that's solid.
Vid, what about you?
So, I mean, like, Smallville is I've been really thinking. So I've read no Superman comics. I am not coming at Superman from the comics at all. I think my first exposure was Justice League, the animated Justice League show.
An all-timer.
And then so that's what I grew up with, and Smallville's what I grew up with because my parents, like my family, watched it as it was airing. And then I think we stopped watching after a few seasons, like early seasons, and then I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And then I would see I'm like surprised that show ran for 10 seasons. And I don't know what, like, I don't know what's going on in the later stuff. Check in on it occasionally. But like that, thinking about Clark Kent for sure. And then I really do think about the Zack Snyder Superman. Like Man of Steel comes to mind a lot because I think
a lot about Man of Steel. Like as a movie
Yeah.
that represents everything that I don't want out of Superman as a pop culture figure, it is nonetheless one that I do turn over in my mind like a stone.
Well, like for me, Man of Steel was my like reintroduction to. When did Man of Steel come out?
2013, I think.
2013. Yeah, so it's like I'm in high school. Like I'm kind of like, late high school. Man of Steel's kind of my like reintroduction to Superman
Sure.
outside of like a child. And so that like kind of became my image of Superman for a while. And that's what I grappled with as like growing up, where I'm like, I don't know if I like Superman. I don't know if I like this Superman.
Sure.
I thought I remember Superman being better. And then like kind of going and be like, oh wow, I really hate this Superman. He's so much cooler, so much nicer. Like there's like fun, like that I think has to be my baseline. It's like, or that's like my modern baseline, and like all of my love and hate of him is entirely weighted against Man of Steel, against how Zack Snyder portrayed him.
I'm coming from a pretty similar place in terms of like I spend a lot of time thinking about the decisions that movie made, and like I think if I the hyper specific answer that I would give, and this ties in both of the things that like bring me to Superman as a like all of my Superman reference points. The trailer for Man of Steel is one of the best pieces of Superman media I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Where they quote All-Star Superman and they just have Russell Crowe as Jor-El solemnly say the words like, you are going to go to a new place and you are going to inspire them and they are going to stumble and fall and they will join you one day in the sun. Like, and you see him take off and you see like a kid in a cape like in Kansas, and then he takes off into the sky and that's it. And I remember watching that being like, it said Zack Snyder, but that looked like a thing that I actually would be interested in. And like the disappointment when that didn't arrive.
Yeah.
That's
oh my god. Well, like that's the thing. Sorry, Roger. It's like that's the thing about like it made me realize what I wanted from Superman.
Sure.
It didn't make me go like this is Superman or this is it, but I like watched it and I mulled it over and I was like, that's not like why did that suck? Like why did that not fit what I wanted? And like I created kind of my own version of Superman out of the rubble of, well, why did I hate that?
you snapped its neck and screamed into the sky and felt bad about it.
What did you want to say, Rufus?
I was gonna say it doubly annoys me because like the best modern piece of superhero like of Superman media ever is Henry Cavill builds a PC stream 2016.
Yeah.
Wow. like there is a world in which Henry Cavill gets cast to play Superman and it like and it works out. And it makes me furious that this one didn't.
He gave an interview when in the lead up to Man of Steel where he just like they were like, hey, don't you like how do you struggle with the fact that Superman's not a cool figure? And like without an ounce of irony, he just looked at the camera and was like, what do you like and they're like, what do you mean like he follows the rules and he's not cool? And they're like, no, he does what's right. How is doing what's right and kind for people not the coolest thing that there is? And like the way like him saying that without an ounce of like irony or derision was the thing where I was like, oh, this movie might be good. And then it wasn't good.
He gets it. Like it's really sad where you're like, Henry Cavill gets it and he was not allowed to do it, like execute it.
Henry Cavill frequently is much better than the media properties that he is a
100%.
Genuinely true.
Somebody put Henry Cavill in a good movie, please. I'm begging. I'm no longer asking.
I know. I'm so charmed by that man, but it's a little hard to watch him and things.
Adira, what about you?
Oh, so my like Superman touch points are the Christopher Reeve movies and the 90s animated show. and like a fair amount of various comics and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's like when I was a kid, I like really watched a lot of animated superhero stuff. Like growing up in the 90s, I was very
Sure.
spoiled. You know, I had Batman the Animated Series, I had animated Spider-Man, and like the animated Superman show wasn't necessarily as good as many of the other things. The sort of broader Justice League shows were generally better.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I also watched all the Christopher Reeve movies as a kid because my dad really liked them. Yeah, my Superman will throw his ass at somebody and trap them.
That feels. I'm glad. I'm glad that this is
Yeah.
on the table as like a thing that we want, because I do. As a moment that is not explained ever.
Yeah,
I do
you
love
just
it.
got a weird. If you haven't ever seen Superman 2, is 2 right, not 3?
Yeah,
that he
it's
does that?
2. He throws it at Zod and just
Yeah.
he doesn't explain it. He doesn't explain what he's doing.
No, he just like pulls his logo off of his shirt, like a cellophane version of his logo, and throws it, and like it traps him in a net. Like it's bonkers.
And it
Like
doesn't.
Superman has gadgets now. You're like, he needs a gadget.
Not even gadgets, plural,
No.
because he just
Just
does one
That's the
gadget,
only time he ever does it.
and it crucially doesn't really work because he like breaks out of it pretty quickly, and then
Yeah.
the fight continues. But it was just kind of like I need a second. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he goes home that night and he pulls down his vision board and crosses off gadgets. Like,
Yeah, like
not my thing.
yeah, my like I first the first Superman comic that I ever read was actually Red Sun,
Ooh.
Sure.
which is what if Superman was Stalin, and that was pretty good.
Red
It's a
Sun.
good comic.
It is
Yeah.
a good comic, and it is funny reading that comic. Like it was also one of my big like early comic book experiences, and reading that initially and then reading it after I got to know a lot more about like comics, but more importantly like comic book writers and their style, is like a very interesting experience, because you can almost to the page read the sections that Mark Millar wrote and the sections that Grant Morrison wrote, and the
Yeah.
section where it ends with spoiler alert, Earth becoming a paradise, becoming so technically advanced that human beings become long-lived people that draw power from the yellow sun. The sun turns red. They send and before it consumes Earth, they send their son backwards in time, where he lands in Soviet Russia, turning the entire story into a time loop.
Yep.
Is the most Grant Morrison thing that I've ever read in my life.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, yeah. How I found out about Red Sun is actually kind of weird. Because I read it as a comic as my second interaction with Red Sun. I first listened to Superman Red Sun as an audio play.
Oh.
Because my uncle is a voice actor, and he played Superman in an audio play version of Red Sun.
That's wild.
Yeah. And like, yeah, that was the first time that like interacting with superheroes became more than old movies and Saturday morning cartoons.
Sure.
Like was like the sort of jump towards like reading Red Sun, because Red Sun also I think is the first traditional comic I ever read.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I then also read All-Star Superman, which is good, but also pretty bonkers.
It is extremely it is both my favorite Superman story ever written, and also one that like I don't necessarily recommend to people if they're like, I want to get into Superman, what should I read? And I'm like, here's 4 books. Once you've read them, come back to me and I will hand you the stone.
Oh.
Yeah. I had a very weird introduction to Superman because of that. Because like I had like pop culture Superman and sort of shining, sort of slightly goofy Saturday
Yeah.
morning cartoon and Christopher Reeve Superman. And then I went to Superman as Stalin and Superman as the literal sun.
Superman flies into the sun to restart it, and then
Lives there.
lives there for a million years, and then it ties back into a comic that Grant Morrison wrote 25 years or like 15 years earlier, that they were like, this is my story and I need it to be finished from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What?
I fucking love Grant Morrison.
I love them so, like, they are legit. I take so much from them as a writer, as just like, here are my beliefs about the world. Here are my beliefs about stories, and fuck your metaphor. I'm just gonna have a character tell you those beliefs for a few pages, and I don't care if the action stops. And I genuinely do admire that so much, like, as a creative.
But yeah, like I was sort of like, I was sort of pushed to be interested in Superman by the people around me, and like one of the things that pushed that was like relatives and like my mother and things being like, Superman's Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
like learn more about Superman because he's Jewish. And no Superman media is he like canonically Jewish, but like he's Sanson and the Golem sort of all rolled in one.
Yeah.
And like he's like, there's I could talk about Jewishness in Superman a bunch, which I will later.
Yeah, we will get to it. I assume so. Yeah,
very shortly.
But yeah, that's enough for my.
This is a good grounding. So there are some questions in the setting a baseline section that I kind of want to go through. I think the last thing that I want to talk through is like what the plot of, I guess we can kind of talk about it in a broad sense, but like, what are the question that I want to start with is like Superman, like the Superman story that we want to tell today and to riff on today. What is the feeling that it should evoke? What is the tone? What are the things that we want our Superman story to feel like? Like, what is the vibe of our Superman story that we are sitting down to tell today? And we should each drop two tone words or feelings onto our list.
Well, I mean, I had one jump to my head before you finished talking, which was hope.
Hope is,
yeah, I feel like that's a big one. That also came to my head.
Yeah. I think that like Superman has gotten really grimdark, and I mean I think like all superhero media has gotten really grimdark.
Yeah,
and I think it's kind of like rooted in like superheroes like modern to get on my little like footstool of a like pedestal for a second and like be like, well, I think it is because when superhero media is being primarily funded by the US military, which is like a literal death cult and like depends on the desire of its soldiers to die in order to function, and on an ideological construction of pessimism and there is nothing better than this in order to like function. When like a literal death cult is funding your superhero media, like it loses all hope because it literally ideologically can no longer do what it used to,
right?
Because its funding sources has robbed it of all its power. And I think like if we are talking about like what Superman says to this moment, it is about hope, and it is also about like, I'm really interested in, I can't think of like the right tone word, but like I'm really interested in talking about like ethical Superman. And I'm not interested in like, Jeff and I have had like a long discussion recently about like not liking when superheroes like talk about leftism, like instead of like actually doing it. But I think that there is like a place where Superman is somebody who like comes from a very particular idea of what right and wrong is.
Yeah.
And like holds up his his power as a way to help to like enforce his ideas of right and wrong, and he has a lot of big questions about like ethically what does it mean to have power,
Mhm.
and I am interested in showing a spider, like I just called him a Spider-Man because I've been reading about Spider-Man all morning. I'm interested in
Hey,
hearing
Spider-Man
about a
really good.
Superman that like has opinions about ethics, which he doesn't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
in
I
modern
agree.
media. And I'm interested in like him being like not a hard liner about it as in like an asshole, but like having firm and clear ideas
Yeah, for sure.
about like what it
100%.
means to be right and wrong.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
Superman should punch Nazis.
He should absolutely punch not. And that was actually the next word that I was going to put on my tone word list is I wrote down ethical, but I also wrote down radical because like Superman, you know, to your point, Adira, like Superman is the creation of two Jewish kids in 1938 during a global rise of fascism that was a character that immediately starts punching Nazis and very famously takes on the very real Ku Klux Klan. Like in the Superman radio show, like it is a famous thing that like the Superman radio show was used as a tool to expose the tactics of the Ku Klux Klan. And like
Mhm.
Klan membership dropped pretty dramatically because they were like, look at this. Like and it was a way of like exposing code words and tactics. And so like there is a radical history to Superman in particular that like to Rufus, your point, like has been completely lost. There is no more radical like, and I am most interested in Superman in his first appearance, and I recommend everyone go read Action Comics #1 because it's also just a wild book. His first appearance,
I should.
he threatens to throw like Warhawk politicians out of a window and
Oh.
then just fucks off. Like it is straight up a like he is in his first appearance. He's like, if you vote for war, I'm gonna come back here and I'm going to murder you. You're gonna send people to die. I'm gonna make sure you die along with them, and then leaves. And like that's it. That is to me the early Superman is he like dangles corrupt landlords out of windows, and and I guess my other tone word to that is something that, and this is I adore the Christopher Reeve Superman movies.
Mhm.
Christopher Reeve is I genuinely, it is cliche to say, but I don't think anybody has done it quite as well, like has captured something about that character quite as well as Christopher Reeve did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I also think the other word that I want to put in is action packed because
Oh,
like
interesting.
so many Superman movies, like Man of Steel, the one thing that I really give it credit for is like going, yeah, but this is also a guy that like flies around and punches really hard and does cool actiony stuff as opposed
Oh,
to lifts a heavy object, shows strain on his face, and proceeds to just lift the thing into the air.
I was
Which may
actually like, there. It's really funny because I was going to propose almost the opposite, and
interesting.
I think we can have our cake and eat it too. You know, like because I think something that kind of talking about like, oh, you know, all of our superhero media is very hopeless, it's
Yeah.
military focused, like all these things. Something that I love about Superman, or a thing that I've like come to love about him, or like the idea of him, or is he's got a ton. He's like an unstoppable machine of a person,
Yeah.
but like it's the small kindness that he does and stuff
Mhm.
like that. You know, it's like he
Yeah.
could just he could just destroy a person, right?
Yeah.
But there's like that, like there's like a kindness to the power, there's a restraint to it, there's
It's
like a quietness. He
uh,
doesn't need to, like a Superman that's not, or it's like the power fantasy is Superman,
it's
right?
yeah.
Quiet
Versus,
was the word I was going to bring up next.
what did you say?
I said quiet was the word I was going to
Quiet, yeah. I've been
Okay.
like a big like kind of like I'm like Superman's been kind of thrown at me recently because of my TikTok feed is all like check out Superman, and I didn't realize how much I needed that because they're all like the small moments. Like all my little TikToks are like him saving people or just like doing little things, or getting a cat out of a tree. You know, like little guys are like, hey, I'm gonna like let me just like console a child.
Sure.
And I'm like, he uses his super speed to not throw somebody out into space, but to get to a person and just like give him a hug. And there's something really beautiful about that.
Yeah, for sure.
There's the like very famous like comics exchange between him and like Billy Baxton Shazam.
Yeah.
Like he goes and yells at the wizard who gave him his powers.
Yeah.
Because he's like, how could you do that to a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Viditya is right. Is that like I think like there part of like getting Superman right is having both of those things.
Yeah.
And like one of the things I'd really like is this isn't really a tone word, but I think that's like now is the right moment to bring it up, which is like I'd really like Clark Kent to be as big a part of this as Superman is.
Yeah.
Like
sure.
I don't want it to be like an intro of Clark Kent and then we spend 2 hours with Superman and then an outro of Clark Kent. You know, like I think that there is, for me, a really successful Superman story can show him going from the big moment to the small moment, can show him going from Clark Kent to like the sort of like very symbolic Superman and then back down to like a more human Superman and then back to Clark Kent again.
Yeah.
And there's like, and there can also be moments where Clark Kent is the symbol, right? Where Clark Kent is like the journalist, like doing his best.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask
his job. Clark Kent should do his job.
I was gonna ask, like, again, like, because I haven't read a lot of the comics and a lot of the cartoons focus on Superman. So it's like, are there runs where like Clark Kent is the hero, or like is that something that is seen often?
There is at least one run that I can think of that was DC did an event called 1 year later where they just like skipped ahead a year and did which is my favorite shit in the world, is when they're just like, stuff's different, surprise. And one of the things that happened in that year was that Superman had lost all of his powers, and the reveal was that Clark Kent finally won a Pulitzer Prize and like finally like took down Lex Luthor in a way that he never had before, because like Superman, because like it was always that he was less of a journalist than a superhero, and without powers he found the best way that he could help was to double down on his journalism efforts. And so the whole thing was that he was like, well, I can't be Superman, so I'm going to fully invest in being Clark Kent, star journalist. And like exposed Luthor for corruption and went after Luthor in a way that Superman never had before.
Yeah, I'm all for that, Rufus. Like, thank you for bringing that up, because that's perfect. Yeah.
I had one more that I wanted to throw in, and then I'll see if anybody else has one more thing they want to throw in. I'm gonna write down romantic. Like, I will reveal my beating shipper heart, which is that like I love the dynamic of Clark Kent and Lois Lane. Like the dynamic of this is like a godlike figure who everyone in the world assumes is like some distant, faraway being that cannot be touched. And there is one person in the world that goes, no, that's the geeky guy around the corner in my office. I've known he's Superman the whole time, and I'm gonna figure it out. And like, there's something to me very like wonderful, and like the idea that she is this icon of the idea that Superman, like, there's this compliment to Superman as Clark Kent in Lois Lane that I think is genuinely very important. And I think that like that dynamic between the two of them is very important to me.
My favorite incarnations of their relationship are when she knows that he's Superman.
Yeah.
All of the sort of like, it's much more interesting to me like when she knows that he's Superman, and when she can be like, hey, this is what I think that you should do as Superman, or hey, like, this is what I think you shouldn't do as Superman. Very much so. Yeah.
Because I think it also shows, like, it's also this tiny little character detail that like establishes her as like the best journalist in the world. Like, there is this idea that like ever since somebody kind of like broke this down for me, it's kind of been lodged in my head that like the Superman Clark Kent dynamic is very much, if you had a coworker that looked a lot like George Clooney, you would not think to yourself, my coworker is my coworker George Clooney that is then like showing up in the office to pretend to not be George Clooney? Is this a secret life situation that is unfolding? And so, and for her to be not only like certain and see that and make that leap, but also be able to then back it up and then go, okay, cool, I've proven this is true. Now let me responsibly use that information as a journalist to figure out how it can best like help the most people. And if that is, I don't tell anybody, but I give Superman advice on what I think he should do. Like those are things that show that she is like a good journalist, a responsible journalist, and has an insight and a way of seeing the world that no one else does.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it like not to be like hashtag topical when we're doing this, but since we're recording it only a couple of days before this is gonna air, like I I mean she is brilliant because like the whole FBI looked at Jimmy a picture of Jimmy Pesto and we're
Yeah.
like, that's not Jimmy Pesto. Like
And
the entire
cast of Bob's
FBI
Burgers going, no, that's Jimmy.
That's fucking
We're all telling you that's Jimmy Pesto.
like the FBI posted a tweet and they're like, who is this man? And every single person in the replies is like, that's fucking Jimmy Pesto.
Tom Lennon's like, yeah, honestly, we've had this conversation. That's definitely Jimmy Pesto. Like, I don't know what else to tell you.
And like the thing is that like it seems wild that nobody would realize that Superman is Clark Kent, but then you like look at our real world and you're like, okay, yeah, like
Yeah,
the
That's Jimmy
FBI would look at a
Pesto.
picture of and be like, that's Jimmy Pesto.
Yeah.
You know?
I thought it was a joke. I saw that tweet. I'm like, are they joking?
Thank you for bringing that up because I've thought about that for the last several years.
So
And, like,
funny to me.
legitimately, I had to stop what I was doing last night to scream about Jimmy Pesto finally got taken down. They finally got him, and it was Jimmy Pesto.
Oh.
And like but like the people who are doing the real journalism and are like, to be serious at this moment,
for sure.
like are not employed by journalism companies because the journalism companies cannot look at Jimmy Pesto and be like, that's Jimmy Pesto.
Right.
Because like they don't have people in their offices who are like connected with the world, and they don't have people in their offices who are allowed to think creatively and or like allowed to imagine that you can have a world in which an actor would want to be in the insurrection.
Right.
Like but like the people who are really doing the journalism work are like the anti-fascist journalists who are out there being like, no, actually, like I do believe that like evil in this world sometimes looks like cartoon actors voice, like cartoon characters voice actors, and like let's like treat that seriously and like investigate that. And that's exactly what Lois Lane is doing, like that's exactly what she does. Is she's like, instead of like telling the story of Superman as it is approved and as it is like helps this world, like I'm gonna think about this and make a creative leap, and like a leap of faith, actually, of like, I have faith in my own gut, to follow this up.
So the last word that I want to add before we move into the next section. Oh, please go ahead.
I want to talk about Superman and Lois Lane a little bit.
Yeah, no, please.
There's a tiny bit we didn't touch on, which is that Superman is a cuddler. I firmly believe fundamentally as a character that he's a person who cuddles.
I buy that.
Yeah,
100%.
You said that, and in my head, I was like, "Well, that's a canon fact that is established somewhere." I was like, "Wow, I'm glad Adira had that very real canon fact tucked in your back pocket."
Yeah, and Lois Lane is a person he can cuddle. Like the man needs to be able to like let his guard down and cuddle and like lounge around a bit.
Yeah.
And I think she's really important because he grew up in a household where he had lots of physical contact.
Yeah.
But when he leaves home, he no longer has that because he has a secret.
Yeah.
And a secret that can be ascertained by like feeling his biceps.
Yeah.
Like you like gently push Clark Kent and realize he's made of fucking steel, and you're like, oh, something's weird here.
Yeah.
Like and suddenly like he is somebody who grew up with a lot of love, who suddenly has a very big distance between himself and the world, and she is something that like gets between that and changes that fundamental like arrangement.
Is this where we talk about how incidental contact with strangers changes when you transition, Rufus?
Right.
Like, yeah.
It's no longer fun.
It's not.
Like, and it's no longer something that can feel casual. And I doubt it felt casual his whole life.
Right.
And we talk about like Superman as the metaphor of the illegal alien a lot. We talk about Superman as the metaphor of like the religious figure a lot.
Mhm.
We talk about him as like the Jewish figure a lot. But like I think he's also a transgender figure. Like he is always also somebody who was assigned a gender at birth that does not matter to him. Like I'm not DC can try to tell me that there are men and women on Krypton as many times as they want, but I do not believe that aliens have gender the way we do. Like
Right.
Even if they do have two binary sexes that loosely map to us, they're not going to consider their gender roles or their gender the same. He comes to Earth, he gets conciliatorily assigned masculine, and then like he lives the rest of his life like having to struggle with like what it means to be a huge macho man and not really be a macho man.
Right.
And I think that there are arguments to read him both as a trans feminine figure and as a trans masculine figure. And like I think you could do equally valid readings either way. And I don't know if we need to like I kind of feel like reluctant to be like, let's portray him as explicitly trans, because I feel like that's kind of not the path to go down. But I do think that like thinking about how he thinks about his gender and thinking about how he thinks about like the human roles he has been assigned without that being based in like something like being like the cultural roles he is assigned without that being his culture. Or like his understanding of himself is like key to understanding like where he's at emotionally,
Right. Yeah.
If we weren't recording, I would have been like hooting and hollering and jumping up and screaming and clapping the entire time Rufus was talking.
Oh, I mean, you can do all of like this is a stream that I encourage it openly.
This.
So my next question is what images stand out? Like what is if you had to think about like an image, right? Like an image, a moment, a thing. What's the image that jumps into your head when you think about like a Superman story? What's the image that you want to see come up at some point? Adira, you are raising your hand, and sorry, Vin.
No, I'm doing the pose.
The pose. I thought you were raising your hand. No, but 100%, 100% the Superman.
Pose.
Yeah.
That's how he flies. He's got the fist. He's got the other one. Yeah.
Holy shit! Sorry, my Superman touchstone is the Iron Giant. You did that, and I was like, that's actually my Superman touchstone. But go on.
Can I tell you,
the pose is so important today.
The pose is you are so dead on correct, Adira. But can I tell you, I didn't talk about one of my top 3 favorite adaptations of Superman. My top 3 favorite pieces of Superman media, which I'm going to give you the 5-second version. Disney's Hercules is a very good Superman movie.
Oh,
it's arguably one of the better It's arguably maybe the best Superman movie, top to bottom.
I gotta look at it as that.
Here's the 10-second explanation. They take Hercules' story and rewrite it to where Hercules is thrown into Earth from his world before calamity strikes. He is raised specifically by humble farmers before a fictional representation of his father tells him that he was sent to the world to do good. And like he meets a brunette woman that sees through his guys and a sassy Italian man to teach him how to be a hero, and then he goes and fights monsters before specifically Hades, who is a bald man, tries to defeat him. Like, it's real specific. It's not like it's one of those like, what if we reimagine as this? But like, they're really consciously doing a thing, and like, it does a really good job of it.
Hercules ends with him like refusing to stay in Olympus and coming down.
He comes down.
That's also a whole thing. It's like he could ascend, but chooses to instead stay with humanity. Wow, that's fucked. That's just Superman.
It genuinely is a really good adaptation, and like I think like Tim, like what are the other Vid, you had an image you wanted to throw out.
Yeah, I really think about Superman looking at the world, like him in space, just kind of looking at Earth. I think that's a Superman image. And I like that too because it's been interpreted in a few ways, right? Like
Yeah.
different people will take that exact same image and it has a different feel to it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to Smallville again, but just because I think that like we've had a lot of like really heroic images of him, and
Mhm.
I'd love to have something that's like a little bit contrasting, just another thing. And
Yeah.
like something that really sits with me is, and I know we talk about a lot. It's so Jesus-y, and we've been talking about how Jewish he is, but I legitimately love the when he's tied to the stake in the cornfield and in Smallville. And I
Oh,
love it for
yeah.
a bunch of reasons. Like, I love it because he doesn't have to be there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah.
there's like some kryptonite shit going on, but
Uh-huh.
to like excuse why he can't get himself out of there. But like in reality, like if he had wanted to stop people from tying him up like that, he could have. And he didn't, because to let himself be bullied is the right thing in that moment, right? At least in his worldview.
Mhm.
And also because it is like, well, it's the trans thing again, right? Which is that like oftentimes people know you are different before you know you are different. And that like I think a lot of people write Superman's like Clark Kent disguise as like a perfect disguise, as like nobody except Lois Lane could ever guess this. But actually, like when we see that moment, we see like, oh, like no, people know he's different. They just don't know why, and they are not willing to connect him to Superman or like to these weird things that are happening in Smallville. But like he is kind of a freak, and
Yeah.
like is a little bit weird and a little bit queer, a little bit like goofy,
Yeah.
a little bit like, you know, lame. And I love that, like I just love that moment of like being like not even Superman can escape bullies, you
Right.
know? And also I think that like making like branding the S into his chest is powerful. Like, and that's a symbol that has come back up and again in the comics over and over again of like what happens when that S gets branded into him or like marked into him in a way that can't be removed.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and like it comes up in like hundreds of different ways across the comics, across everything. But like that is like when I think about like when his symbol becomes part of him, that's the image that comes up in my head. You know?
Yeah. So
That's good.
please.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm done.
Here's my one image, and this is a very, very specific image that like is from a comic that I couldn't tell you what it is, but also like is it feels like a universal Superman image that like is extremely important to me. And that is Superman sitting on a roof eating hot dogs with Jimmy Olsen. Like, I can't tell you. It's from a comic book, but like the image of Superman, like his feet dangling over the edge of a building, his best friend sitting next to him, and like his romantic partner could also be there, but like sitting and eating like a chili dog is to me like it is an essential like image. It is just this like there is a fundamental comfort to it that I think like gets at a lot of like thematically what we've been talking about, especially around like sort of the queerness of Superman as an image. Is like Superman is there's also a comfort to that, right? There is a comfort to, and like it ties back into like like saying talk like this is a thought I have specifically about the power fantasy of Superman. And the power fantasy of Superman is not necessarily that a man can fly. It is that a person can have all that power and not let it corrupt them, but instead let them be free of fear and worry and concern and focus strictly on what is doing what is right and good. And this idea that like this almighty powerful figure that could move mountains and could do a million things wants nothing more in this moment than to sit with his best friend, his girlfriend, his wife, his boss, whoever, and just enjoy a hot dog and like look out at the city that he loves, is a very important Superman beat to me.
There have been
Yeah.
a few times where I've seen in comics or cartoons or things like that where Superman will like be eating food and he will get a stain on his shirt, like
Yeah.
the Superman outfit, and then he flies back home to have his mom do his laundry.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like when you brought up like eating a chili dog, I'm like, oh, it's very hard to eat a chili dog without getting chili at least somewhere on you.
It's tough. It's not easy.
And like, so like the idea of like Superman's eating a hot dog and he ends up with some mustard on his Superman costume.
Yeah.
Like that's a thing that I like, really like. The sort of like, because it feels like another sort of connection between Superman and Clark, right?
Yeah.
Like Clark is like very often like described as a klutz. Like that's part of the like the disguise there, right? Is that he's very clumsy and things like that. But Superman's not clumsy.
Yeah.
Like
it's the humanity. It's like weirdly say like a little bit of mustard is like, that's the humanity of him. He's the greatest man alive, but he still can't fucking eat a chili dog properly.
Yeah, but like Superman should also sometimes be holding a rock and go, and then, like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, this is good. I'm so glad about this. All right. I guess the final three, the big three other questions. We've already really talked about what things are at work in the text, setting elements, forces, and groups. So I guess what I want to talk through next is like, what are the characters? There's a lot of Superman characters. Who are the characters in our story that we cannot tell the story without?
We just mentioned Jimmy Olsen, which I think is very funny that we've gone this long and not mentioned Jimmy Olsen. I get
his parents.
And his parents. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we have Clark, I think it's very important to talk about his parents. If we have Clark, right? Or if we want to focus on that.
Yeah.
Unless you want to tell a Clark story out in Metropolis, he doesn't get to like he talk to his parents.
Well, even then, Ma Ken is on the phone. Like,
he's talking to her on the phone.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, he's calling all the time. Yeah.
She's doing that awkward FaceTime pose and
on an iPad, like down here,
or like texting him minion memes from Facebook. You know, like like I think we could tell a story in Metropolis that still has the Kens in it.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's one of they're characters where even if they are, having read and listened to several Superman stories where they are explicitly not a thing, where he is either just like a grown ass man that never knew, like was just like landed on Earth as an orphan, grew up as an orphan, became Superman, or as in the radio show, showed up on Earth as an adult. Some people told him, go to Metropolis, pretend to be Clark Kent, be a journalist, you're good. They are
radio show's backstory is the best.
Oh my god. Okay.
What?
Let me tell you the origin story. Like Superman's origin story in the radio show fucking rules. I was talking about this on Twitter recently. It's the second episode of the radio show. He arrives on Earth. There is a runaway train. On this runaway train, there is a father and son. He arrives on Earth, fully grown adult in the Superman costume. It is not explained. He arrives, rips the roof off of the train, immediately saves the father and son. The train crashes, and he touches down, and he's like, I'm a visitor from an alien world. I was sent here as my planet exploded, and I have arrived here to do good and protect people. And the father and son go, all right, cool. And he goes, I need you to keep the secret of my existence from people. And they're like, great, but you're going to need a secret identity, and also you're going to need a way to find crimes. Maybe go to a newspaper. Have you considered an alternate name? Clark Kent's a good one. All right. Bye.
What?
The economy of storytelling.
Yeah.
They cover so much, and then crucially, the father and son never turn up again, which means they kept that fucking secret.
Secret.
They were like, oh, Superman, Yeah, we gave him that name. We're not gonna tell
Yeah.
anybody though.
I love that. That rules, actually.
It does kick ass. But I also think that Ma and Pa are characters that like are so important to me that like if they're not explicitly shown or spoken about, like their shadow falls far over the story, you know,
Yeah.
and it's that idea that Superman is a sweet-hearted farm boy from a small town who grew up with kind-hearted parents, even if they are not explicitly like shown or shown, their presence is there in every moment of Superman.
Yeah. I think I got a proposal.
Hit me.
When we're in the characters things, this is the time to do it. I think we should invent a new villain for him.
Ooh.
I'm fine with this. I'm cool with this.
Because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like he doesn't, like, Lex Luthor is his iconic villain, but like, we've talked about this on this stream before, that like, in the impossibility of seeing Lex Luthor as an actual threat.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and the other villains, like, I feel like are iconic to him are all like kind of in the Marvel, just like megalomaniacal, no ethics, just like kind of being a shithead with massive power. Kind of like, yeah.
I
Run.
I agree very heavily.
I want something for him that feels like an ideological challenge, but also like a power challenge. Or like, how many times is Lex Luthor gonna do the same fucking kryptonite thing?
Yeah.
Like at some point, like, get over it. You know.
Change the playbook. You need something else, bud.
And I think that we should have Lex Luthor in this story, but I'd much rather see him as kind of like somebody in a transitional phase between villain and friend. Like, not a redemption story. Like, I'm not interested in like telling a redemption story of him because I want to focus on Superman. But one of those like people who's like, yeah, this is a character who's been around for like 20 years of my life. Like, like he's around. He's not really a threat to me anymore, but he's here.
Yeah.
That's Kramer, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of this truly is just like popping off with hot takes, and like I appreciate this because y'all, I got some hot takes. I'm so glad that you said that we want to go in that direction, and also I'm glad that we're not doing the Zack Snyder thing, because like my super nuclear take is that I don't like when people are like, Darkseid is Superman's ultimate villain. No, Darkseid is a new god, and there's a whole mythology there that like gets erased when people are like, Darkseid should punch Superman and Superman alone. That's a whole other thing that we don't have to get into, but know that like, as someone for whom the Jack Kirby Fourth World books are important, I have very strong takes on, and I'm glad that we're gonna go in a different direction. Are there any other characters that we think like have to come up?
Oh, very briefly, as we talked about ideological challenge and stuff. Do you know who I think Superman's ultimate villain is?
Who's that?
Himself.
Oh,
yeah. The fact that like he is one man. Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Superman cannot affect systemic change.
Right.
Like Superman wants the world to be a better place, and he's trying to help in the ways that he has with his powers that he has and stuff like that. As we talked about with the whole Clark Kent thing, right? When he became a journalist, like, and got the Pulitzer, he was actually able to take down Luthor in a way that he never would have otherwise, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
That's true. That's what's good. That's what's good.
Yeah, I kind of like, again, just to make a wild pitch, like the kind of thing that popped into my head is like, well, his villain has to be not like a singular guy.
I was thinking about that too.
Like, it has to be like something more
collective.
distributed, you know? And my other thing was like, well, like, it kind of has to be the military, right?
I was literally just thinking the U.S. Army. Like, when you said distributed, I was like, it's the U.S. Army. Like,
it's definitely It's definite. So this actually segues us really nicely into the plot of the thing, because like a plot kind of like emerges in my head of like a challenge for Superman and for Clark Kent alike. And this is also like an observation about like the nature of superhero stories and superhero like movies and media in particular. That is like a well-trodden what's the word I'm looking for? Discussion point. Like it's well-trodden discourse, but like I think relevant here in a way that like gives us an opportunity to like engage with it in an interesting way, which is the plot, the talking point that heroes are fundamentally reactive, and that like in a narrative standpoint, the villain of a film, a superhero movie in particular, is often what you would consider the protagonist, because they are a person with a goal that has taken active steps to make the thing happen, and the hero is often the person reacting to that into an antagonistic role. If we truly invert that and we make this a story about a Superman that exists and has been, doing big, large, scary things in the way that an unjust system would react to that challenges Superman directly and puts Superman into this protagonistic role that says, I'm making changes. Like, we're making things better. I'm not interested in I'm going to do what I can, but I'm going to do this. And the villain being an antagonistic force that is like, no, we don't want you to do that. That is a very compelling challenge that I think that is my big pitch.
Yeah, like imagine a Superman movie where he shows up to the United States State House and he says that they're voting on a budget or something, and he's like, you need to lower military spending.
Yeah. And they're like, no. What's he gonna do? Like, what? Yeah. He is powerless at that very moment. That's very fun. Actually, my question I want to ask is like timeline wise, right? Like you're kind of mentioning like Luthor is no longer a threat. He's kind of in the middle. Does that mean like this is like Superman's like not final frontier, but it's like, okay, I've dealt with super villains. Like he's now like well into being Superman. People know this. And now it's like, okay, why does the world keep burning? Oh, it's like legislation. It's covered like, is this like later in his life? It's like kind of his final challenge of like understanding what's actually the problem at hand.
Or is he very young? And he's just starting out and he's like, I need to make the world a better place. And I see this and I look at the world and I'm a journalist and I go, wait a second, a lot of these problems are caused by the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex and all of these things. And oh shit.
There's an interesting thing that can happen.
How do you punch a systemic issue?
Yeah. Just to think about Luthor a little bit, like not a major antagonist, but like that also puts Luthor in his relationship with Luthor in an interesting place, because like if we go the route of Luthor wants to, it's like I'm going to be a president and stuff like that. They could be like kind of weird allies. Like Clark can be like, hey, Luthor, I want to help. I wish I could do anything. And Luthor's like, well, I'm kind of in the system. There's an interesting kind of tension that could be built there without it being a full-blown villain arc.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel that like when I came into the stream, I was thinking like let's do a young Superman story, because I love that I love that time period, and I don't really think that anybody has done like, I feel like
a year one,
a year one, a really really good year one story that like, but the more we talk about it, the more I think that actually what I want to do is like Superman in his 30s.
Yeah,
and what I want to do is like I have a really specific timeline in my head, which is that like if he is as distant from year one Superman as we are from the 2008 presidential election. Because year one Superman is his 2008 presidential election. It's this moment where he feels like he comes up and he's like, I can really change the world. Like the representational politics of having like this icon that like people can aspire to be will change things. And then 2008 was 15 years ago, and now he's like, he starts being Superman when he's like 20, and now he's 35, and nothing is different.
Yeah,
except like now he has like a weird psychosexual friendship with Lex Luthor instead of a weird psychosexual enemyship with
Yep.
Lex Luthor, and now he has a wife, but like, but he's still fighting the same battles, and
Yeah.
like, and in fact, the battles have gotten harder to win, you
Yeah.
know, and like, how does Superman deal with like the like, I'm 35 and I don't know what the world is going to look like.
Yeah,
in
right,
5
right,
years,
right.
You know,
That's sick. That is
Yeah.
that genuinely does rule a lot.
Yeah,
And I
Superman
think-
looks ahead to middle age and goes, "What?"
I don't love that.
is there just this for the rest of my life? You know,
Yeah.
like
that genuinely rule, and then that present, and there's an element of that, like this what that reminds me of as we kind of like start to kind of like think about the plot of the text, but also I think kind of start to move into like play section, or like the token economy section of the game, is like there is an element of and so I'm going to pause here and actually explain like how we get and lose tokens in the game, now that we're kind of starting to like visualize what is happening.
Sure.
This is a no dice, no masters game. So there is a pool of tokens. There are small moves which allow us to gain a token. Those include referencing another text, reinforcing a sensory detail, transmuting a detail into something else, giving a line more action or context, pulling in elements from the source text, strengthening existing connections, illuminating minor events, giving textual relationships more history, or highlighting contradictions. These give us a token. We can spend those tokens to make large moves like changing pivotal choices, betraying the source text's intent, revealing nuance not previously present, linking things that were once unconnected, breaking events, reordering the story, rendering major events unimportant, and creating and changing relationships entirely. So I would like to specifically pull in an element from the source text here, because what that reminds me of very specifically is that is like a driving force in All-Star Superman under different contexts, but it is like a prominent idea. The premise of All-Star Superman is that he gets essentially like sun poisoning. He literally like Icarus flies too close to the sun and his body starts to break down. So he only has about a year left to live.
Oh, what?
He gets super cancer. Yeah.
He gets super cancer and like realizes he's like, oh, there's a bunch of shit I haven't done. So he sets about to make a world that will be okay without Superman. And like a big plot of, and like that is the driving force of that story. And like that is a very good, even if in a different context, if it is not explicitly that he has sun cancer, like this idea of Superman going, all right, the world has not improved. Like what I've been doing does not work. It's time for me to go do what I can actually do. And to see that play out as like, there's this incredible, I'm thinking about what you were saying earlier, Rufus, about like this not being an intro as Clark Kent Superman story. If we start with Superman, like just showing some miraculous stuff, right? Like we see Superman like doing the big superheroic things right off the bat, and effectively a montage. You get this idea, like you can show this idea of Superman like doing things that are big and heroic and dramatic right off the bat to show A, that this is an older Superman that has been around the block, and B, oh, this Superman is doing things that like are big and world changing in a way that are going to have repercussions when people that don't want those world changing things happen to occur.
Yeah.
Really like that. I like that a lot. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
We don't need to. Does Justice League exist? I know in a lot of these movies, like, they don't need to show up, but I'm like, is this Superman knowing other supers and having all this stuff? It maybe just changes the context a little bit.
It does.
Where's characterization? Again, they don't need to show up, but it's like, or do we want to say like, no, he's kind of the hero of Earth?
I'm kind of interested in something in the middle.
Okay.
I think that like, I think there's a difference between Marvel and DC, and I think that like the superhero teams in Marvel don't bother me as much because they're not as super organized and like centralized as Justice League. And I think that like if you have him be part of like a multinational organization, the like question of like him trying to affect systemic change kind of like goes out the window, because like he can just
Oh.
like go to Justice League and be like, hey, actually, like we're the kind of like European Union of superheroes. Like, can we
Let's
just
stop
like
war.
can we just like ban Facebook? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Okay.
but at the same time, I do like him having like other superheroes to bounce off of. I just think that like there cannot be a Justice League. Like I don't have a problem with there being
Ooh.
like a Batman. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows? Maybe that's the
This
climactic
this
conclusion
leads
of
to
the
it.
film is we need to do systemic things. So let's build the Justice Leagues. That way we can come together and have the debate and government and
Yeah.
exchange of ideas and whatnot. You know? Like,
Yeah.
That
I
does
like that. I'm like, I've also like you bring up, because I think a lot about like Superman and Batman's relationship, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And there's something interesting about this specifically kind of setup where it's like, what does Clark and Bruce like? What does Bruce have to say about Clark wanting to do this? Right? Like, there is like kind of a. Like, it seems like something that Clark would be like, hey, Bruce, what the fuck am I doing? You know, like, I want to do this. Why isn't it working? And Bruce maybe being like, I don't know, man. I throw money at the machine and nothing changes, you know, like
that's a pretty good that is a pretty good like follow like thinking about this like beat wise, that's a pretty fun immediate shift if we see like this montage of like superhero-y things, and then interspersed we get it tells us a lot about this character is that we get this monologue of like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't working. And we get shots of him just like sitting sadly in the bat cave, sitting in his parents' farmhouse, like chatting with Lois. Like, we see that he's someone who has these relationships, but also like we're seeing these amazing superheroic things, and we're hearing him be like, is any of this, is this it? Like,
he's like thinking,
is
like
this
he's
actually
constant
helping people?
Yeah.
I feel like that sits really true to life for me, because like I'm kind of in that position where I'm having these conversations right now in my life, where like everyone around me, I'm kind of like, well, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? And like over and over and over again, and there's no it's not like a what am I doing with my life. So it's a little bit that, because I don't really want to be in my current industry for the rest of my life. I don't really, like, but like it's on a much larger scale. It's like I'm getting transphobically attacked in public more than I've ever have before. Like I I was in 5th grade in 2008, and now I'm 25 and nothing is different. And in fact, it's worse. Like miles worse. And I'm going to like my 2 partners, I'm going to my friends, I'm going to my parents, and I'm like, what do I do? Like, what do I do? And this fuck thing is like, nobody has any answers for me. Like, nobody can tell me what I can do. And like, I can't imagine that like, Superman has slightly different verbs for interacting with the world than I do, but that doesn't mean like that isn't still happening.
I think seeing those, and like I think seeing those conversations is absolutely fascinating, because like it shows that it emphasizes that detail that you just said of like, no one has an answer. If you don't get an answer from your kindly farm parents, you don't get an answer from the world's greatest journalists, you don't get an answer from the billionaire industrialist in the cowl that is waging a one-man war on crime. Like, it's like it just emphasizing that idea that like, yeah, like this is not something that anyone has an easy answer to, and Superman has to make this kind of decision for himself on a fundamental level.
And I think if I can offer another beat, which is like, I think the last one is like it starts with him like talking to his parents, because those are always his first stop. And then it goes like, then it's Lois and Jimmy, and and then it's Batman, and then the last one is like when like the montage stops, it's him knocking on Lex Luthor's door, and Lex Luthor must be like, it must be so bad if you're here for me. Like, if you are so upset that I'm on your list, something is really wrong.
Can I flavor Lex Luthor in a specific way?
Sure. Please do.
Because like I love super mega businessman Lex Luthor, but if this is a Luthor that like has kind of if this is a Luthor that is kind of in the position where he's going to start almost segueing into friend, I would love if Luthor has like fully leaned into I mainly want to build giant green and purple like robot suits. The idea that like because like the iconic Superman visual is like confronting Lex in like Mr. Burns's office, right? It is the
Yeah.
giant boardroom office.
Yeah.
If it's instead in like a workshop where there is an ominous green and purple robot suit that's in like a state of disrepair, we've
Yeah.
already seen it smashed up, and like we're having this conversation, and there's just like a big ominous green laser gun, and Luthor's just like, yeah, I mean, we could let's walk and talk.
This is Luthor. He has lost.
Yeah.
And now he's working on his cars. Like this is him being like,
I mean, the
Fuck
thing is,
it.
in this universe, he is just Chris Angel. Like,
Yeah.
like he is doing his weird performance, like using his daddy's money to like fund his weird performance art. You know, like
I think a lot about there was a one-off Funny or Die video 15 years ago that had John Hamm as Lex Luthor being like, stop saying that I want to use my money to kill Superman. And then he was like, so what would I use my money for if you give me my money? If you give me these tax breaks? Well, I would try to kill Superman, obviously. I think that like that image of Luthor is just like having this lab of like having this heart to heart, but also the subtext of like, I am gonna try to kill you next time we podcast, right?
I like them
love
having
that.
this sort of like Inspector Cousteau Cato sort of thing.
Mhm.
like,
I'm
where
gonna
it's like,
come after you.
Yeah, we're friends, but I might try to kill you. But afterwards we can sit down and eat a hot dog.
I would even say I'd love to see like in this little scene of them talking, Luthor's absolutely like, hey, can I just like, and like points a ray gun at him or something, and Clark is like, yeah, and then shoots it, nothing happens. Okay, cool. So I know what to tweak. Like, it's like, can I like test this on you? Like, no, I'm not trying to kill you right now, but frequency's off.
I love Inspector Clouseau and Cato is such a good because the idea that like halfway through that scene it's just like, oh, and by the way, I pull a rope and like kryptonite rocks fall down, Superman dives out of the way, like, damn it.
Yeah.
You know what the other touchstone for them is? It's that, and it's also Dr. Doofenshmirtz and Perry the Platypus.
Oh, that's really that's so fun.
And it's just like Lex Luthor bitching about his second divorce, like, and Superman like looking at his watch and being like, "You gotta kill me, or do you need another like 25 minutes on like the ex-wife?" Like,
does Luthor, and I know this changes between different runs and stuff, but like I guess in our run, does Luthor know Superman is Clark Kent, or is this like I've come to you as Superman and he's all like, you're Superman? Or is there like, has their relationship gone to a little bit of like Luthor knows the humanity of Clark and chooses to keep that a secret also? Like there's
here's my thought, and tell me if we want to take this in a different way. I think it's somewhere in the middle, which is that Luthor has accepted the fundamental humanity of Superman without ever making the cognitive leap that he might be living. Like that he might, because it's important to like an important part of Lex Luthor's like dynamic to me is the idea that he believes that Superman is a being from another world who believes himself to be entitled to the riches of Earth, because Luthor as a human believes that he is entitled to the riches of Earth. And if I had, it's a projection thing, right?
Yeah.
It is if I had Superman's power, I would rule as a god, which means that he has to think that he wants to rule as a god. And so like, I think there is a sense that like my proposal is that he sees Superman, he like has come to grips with the fact that Superman is not, that is projection. And as much as it pisses him off, like,
yeah, Luthor sends his mail to Superman to the Fortress of Solitude.
Yeah, right.
Like
okay.
If he's going to send Clark a birthday card, right? He sent it to the Fortress of Solitude. you know?
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
think that is like a really like that can be a really big plot point is actually like Superman, like in order to make systemic change, he has to trust Lex Luthor with his secret identity.
Yeah.
And
Ooh.
like yeah, like Jeff says, like Lex has like come to think of him as a human, but he has never been like, okay, a specific human.
A specific
Right.
human. I love that. I'm so on board with that. Yeah.
Superman's a person, but is Superman a guy?
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Does Superman have pronouns?
Yeah. The Superman shit.
It's like, yeah, Lex
A
has come to
scientific
terms
journal
that
published by Lex Luthor.
Lex has come to terms that Superman shits.
Yeah.
This is, I think, his losing moment. It's a moment that he lost.
Damn it.
Is damn, this fucking guy shits, huh?
Damn.
There's this TikTok audio that I saw the other week that is making me think of a possible tone for Lex Luthor's sort of advice to Superman that would sort of put him into this conflict with the U.S. military, which is, do you want to be a girl that poops or do you want to be a bitch that shits?
Yeah.
That's great. Because like that also that moves the plot forward, and like that gives a really nice like touch to Luthor's perspective. Is like if any one person is going to kind of give the splash of water in the face of like, you're a living fucking god, like you can, if you want to unravel the system, go and do it.
Yeah.
And like go and do it, because that also allows us to pull in, I think, my greatest or my favorite, like in my mind, two of the single greatest Superman lines ever written that I think we could kind of offhandedly include in this scene is the greatest indictment of Lex Luthor, where I think we could even have him explicitly say, like, if I had what you had, I would have saved the world. And Superman just goes like, you could have already saved the world a dozen times over. Like, it's the best indictment of Lex Luthor that has ever been written.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
But like I think that that we also can invert that by way of like, yeah, you could change the world and like go and do that.
That's really nice. Yeah. And then we cut, right? Like, and
that's
then
it. That's it. That's the story.
Well, I think even that conversation, that explicit conversation of if I what you had, I would have saved the world already. That can sort of, I think there's definitely going to have to be a check-in, right?
Yeah.
Where Superman comes back to talk to Lex Luthor sort of again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, later.
And Luthor's like, well, why haven't you succeeded already?
Ooh.
If I had what you had, I would have done this already. And then like Superman's like, if I had what you had, I would have solved the world as well. Like,
yeah.
And then they have to put their heads together and go, hold on a second, what are we not seeing?
Right.
Yeah,
that's great.
And like I think like the stages between that first conversation with Lex and that second conversation with Lex, which I think was, but like if we're thinking about this like a movie, like the first conversation is like the first scene that's not the opening credits.
Yeah.
The second conversation is like the 1/3 mark where the plot really kicks off.
Yeah.
And I think like the between there is like Superman trying to solve human problems with inhuman ability.
Yeah.
And it like really failing. And like my thought is like, so like I'm a huge nuclear history nerd, and I come from a long line of bomb makers, and a lot of my political work and my arts work is about like reckoning with what it means to be somebody who comes from a long line of bomb makers and also be radical and like love my grandparents and love my family and know that the US military like destroyed their lives and traumatized them to the extent that they could not see love if it danced naked in front of them.
Right.
But also that they like helped unspeakable evil into this world. And like the thing that comes up to me is like, if I had Superman's power, what would I do? Is like, well, I do what the plowshares did. You know, when those 8 nuns broke into K-12 and tried to literally beat nuclear warheads to death with hammers. And like, you know, they immediately got arrested, and you know, many of them were in prison for the rest of their lives for endangering, for like treason. And you know, like Superman shows up at the nuclear bomb facility. He's like, okay, I'm here to like dismantle bombs. You know, like
I'm here to get rid of all the nukes.
Yeah, and like I'm gonna
it.
use my like lasers, and you can't stop me. But then, like, you know, 2 weeks later, there's nukes again. Like, you can't.
Has anyone ever seen the worst Superman movie? Superman 4, A Quest for Peace?
Where he tosses all the nukes.
Where he throws all of the nukes in space?
It just spins them around in a big old net.
The plot of Superman 4 is legitimately that Superman starts out by going to the UN and being like, nukes are gone. I'm taking the nukes. And he takes them and he throws them into space.
Yeah.
And like that is very much like what like the what you are describing is like Superman being like, I'm taking the nukes. They're mine now. I'm going to dismantle them and safely destroy them in space.
Except unlike Superman 4, which is like, oh, this could work. It's like this movie is like 5 seconds later, it did not work.
Oh,
it didn't work, yeah.
And this Superman 4, like the world immediately responds by, I think, injecting a guy with nuclear weapons and turning him into the Nuclear Man.
Yeah,
which is the wild, like, and I think he claws Superman and turns him into multiple people, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, it's weird stuff.
They pull a lot of things in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. But yeah, the idea that like Superman is like, I'm taking the nukes, and it just flat out like doesn't work because the war machine continues to exist is very extremely compelling.
I also just really want the scene of Superman is mid dismantling a nuke while like there are guys there shooting him with guns, just like unloading him.
Yeah.
And he's like, guys, no, stop. I'm trying to dismantle this nuke. Like, please, I don't want to hurt you guys. You know, like you guys should step back. This is radioactive. Like,
yeah. He's actually like taking bullets because he's like, no. If this hits something, it'll explode. You get that, right?
You're shooting at a nuclear. You recognize you're shooting at a nuke.
Yeah. And that's really great. I wanted to ask this earlier, and this might be a good time to do this too, is a part of what Superman is reconciling with, and we're talking about like this is like a modern, we're talking a lot about modern day political problems.
Yeah.
How much of society is on Superman's side generally, right? Like, is he like, has his political kind of social status changed also, where there's like he's tried to be a symbol of hope for a long time, and then also just the natural rise of horrible fascism is like Superman's actually bad for us, and he's I want to help people. Why are there constantly people that think I'm a problem?
So Adira, go ahead. I have a specific thought about this, but I want to hear what you got.
Yeah, I think that Superman is probably pretty disliked by basically any politically engaged person.
Cool. Okay.
I think if we've had hopeful Superman who's been saving the world and doing various things, I think that there are legitimate critiques that you can make of that Superman from all sorts of political dimensions.
Yeah.
Well, I love
people would, because I'm sure it gets clicks.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's exactly what we have now, where like 70% of America is okay with trans people, but you don't see them talking ever, you know? And like, well, like what we have is like 70% of America is like, yeah, Superman can keep on saving me, but like I don't really have any strong opinions about him. And then like 15% who are like leftists and are like, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
And 15% who are like fascists and are like, fuck this guy.
Yeah. I mean, this is like the ethical and the radical tone words that we have. It's like you kind of gotta deal with that. Yeah, there's also leftists that are like, he's doing it wrong. He should just blow up the nukes. And why hasn't he yet? And stuff like, you know, like
why hasn't Superman killed Joe Biden?
Yes.
Is Superman a cultural Marxist? The longest thread in the history of it.
Oh my God. There's in that opening montage, like we see him also just watching a YouTube video, like a reactionary YouTube video about him, and he's just like, he's just he's keeping tabs on all the video essays about him.
I want to see ContraPoint's take on Superman.
Contra.
Yeah,
Jeff, you were gonna say something.
Yeah. We
I-
all have opinions on this.
I was going to say, like, I think that this is goalposting a little bit of, like, this is also the Asper. I was talking to Rufus about this recently. Like, one of the big things in superhero stories to me is that they are like an aspirational fantasy. Very specifically, they are the stories that, like, we are imagining a world where somebody can fly and do things and not be corrupted by it. I almost imagine that, like, a big goal of, like, where we're headed with the story, both in terms of, like, what Superman is doing to dismantle things, and also in Superman acting against the forces that would try to stop him from radically changing the world, as the aspirational fantasy note of, like, getting those, radicalizing that 70%, for lack of a better way to put it. Like, it is that sense. Because, like, to pull in another thing from another text, the thing that I love, one of my favorite superhero sequences, and I can deliver my TED talk about how the greatest update to Superman's character is the character of Spider-Man, but the sequence in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film of the news report of J. Jonah Jameson being like, he's a threat, he's a menace, and then they do 6 talking head interviews where everybody's just like, oh, Superman, or oh, Spider-Man? Yeah, I love that guy. Save me a week ago. Like, that idea that, like, as he is doing this, it is, we see that majority of, like, people go like, oh no, Superman is tearing down the nukes. Like, why would I be sad about that? Like, I don't have to worry about a nuke going off now.
I think a really good lens to view that through is by having that viewed through Clark Kent's coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Ooh.
Because if Clark Kent works for a newspaper, you know they've got some all sorts of people of various politics, many of them incredibly shitty. I
can attest that 2 of the 3 major news companies I've worked for had lots of really shitty people.
Yeah. And so, like, having, like, the lens of both, like, his, like, both the changing opinions of his coworkers and, like, comparing how his coworkers feel about Superman with how, like, the average person feels about Superman when we see Superman save them and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I really like that. That gives us, to Rufus, your point, like, that gives us a lot of Clark Kent. If we're seeing the changes of the world through the eyes of the newsroom and through the eyes of Clark and Lois and Jimmy and the Daily Planet, like, we're seeing those changes in real time. I think that is a good framing mechanism, and I think that gives us a good opportunity to check back in with those characters as the story progresses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, this is, like, I feel like our check-in for post-Superman dismantling nukes is Clark probably, I want to pitch this. Clark probably walks in and is, like, beaming, like, I did it. Or, like, he's like, I can't wait for my coworkers to tell me, oh my god, guess what? The world is saved. And he just probably walks in and it is a mess. Like, the newsroom is on fire.
This is their relationship in a nutshell. Walks in, Lois grabs him by the tie and just pulls him into a room where there are a bunch of panicked looking journalists, papers scrawled about, like, and I want a shot to what we were talking about with Lois earlier. There's, like, a little bit of almost like a mock Sorkin shot where, like, we're doing the walk and talk, but she's just got him by the tie the whole time, and she's like,
I would kill for a Sorkin written superhero show. I would kill for it. I would do things that are not nice.
And, like, we get a whole like a Sorkin walk and talk where she's got him by the tie and she's explaining, like, don't bring up this. Don't bring up that. Remember, you are going to hear some things that are going to make you real tempted to try that are going to make you real tempted to say some things that are going to make you drop the facade. I am warning you right now, that is not going to go well. Keep your head, keep chill, keep your head on a swivel. I will do the talking, Clark. Just sit, be quiet, nod. You were busy on a 2-day trip. Don't raise any other questions.
What was Lois's opinion of Superman doing that? Or is that also like kind of a shot to her? No, it wouldn't, because we've established that Clark talked to her and stuff
I
like
figure probably here's my thought.
Yeah.
So Clark talks to Lex Luthor, right?
Yeah.
And then the next shot, he's at home with Lois and they're like eating dinner or something, right?
Yeah.
And they're like talking and chatting, and oh, that's good. I like it. Rufus is just Lois, and Lois is played by Allison Janney.
Oh, yeah.
Really genuinely great.
Yeah. And they're like eating food and chatting, and they're talking about various characters. They talk about his parents, all sorts of various things and stuff. And then we see them like sit down on the couch and like watch some TV or something for a couple of hours, and then they're like going to head to bed, and they're like laying down in bed and they're cuddling, and he goes, I think I'm gonna dismantle all the nukes. And she's like, okay, honey. It's good to have aspirations. How about you sleep on it? And then the next shot is him doing it.
I love the idea that he has said this many times before, and she's like, yeah. Sometimes you just like, that's just the thing that you say before bed. You're like, I think I should do. It's like, I'm gonna do it.
There's absolutely a beat while they're eating dinner of like, yeah. So I will admit I did talk to Luthor, and she's like, did he pull the string and try to have the kryptonite rocks dropped on you? He did, not fast.
Not fast.
Why does he think that it's gonna drop down? You're gonna have so long to picture.
he comes into the office and she's like, I didn't think you'd actually do it. And he was like, well, I told you I'd do it. And she's like, well, you say you finish the deck every week for like 5 years, and you never do that.
That's a part of it, so it can walk and talk.
Yeah.
It's interspersed like that. That's beautiful. It's like interspersed with like her being very like professional, and then also having home life gripes.
Yeah.
Like splicing both of those in.
You dismantled the nukes. When's the last time you did the dishes, Clark?
And it's not like a sitcom like the wife hates the husband. She's just like,
oh, yeah.
I've learned you by now.
Yes,
and like the thing you do is like, you say you're gonna do the dishes, and you say you're gonna do the deck, and you say you're gonna dismantle the nukes, and none of those things ever happen. And like, I just have to live with that because I love you, and because like being Superman is more important than like our deck being finished.
Yeah.
But like, when did you get up and go?
I do pulling on the romance, and also like the Lois Lane I have in my head. I do think there's a moment right before they walk in the door. She's had this whole conversation of like, yeah, you say you're gonna do a lot of stuff, and there is a moment where she stops and looks and goes, but for the record, this is the hottest that you've ever been, and be fucking ready, because I am going to pounce on you like a motherfucker the second we walk into our apartment later. You be ready.
She's like, we do have to deal with our colleagues for 3 hours, and then
call me
I'm no longer
because I will destroy you.
Oh, that's really good. So then the newsroom scene happens of just intense problems that Clark is just struggling to work through.
And then he probably goes and has lunch with Jimmy Olsen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I imagine Jimmy pulls him out, which I think would be nice. Like maybe it's that, like, because you mentioned like you're gonna want to explode, and I think like he's hitting a breaking point, and then Jimmy opens the door and is like, "Hey, Clark, you want to get lunch?" And then it's like
Jimmy knocks on the glass ball.
Yeah,
and it's like,
hot
dogs.
I had another hit.
To borrow another West Wingism, Jimmy Olsen. My favorite thing is when Toby throws balls, like he throws rubber balls at his assistants in the West Wing, and Jimmy Olsen does that to Clark because he knows nothing will ever hurt him.
I was gonna say, can I propose like a metaphorical throwing of a rubber ball? which
But it's a
is
literal.
which is Clark like gets like a buzzing in his ear of like Jimmy's like whatever communication method. It's like, hey Clark, I accidentally summoned a giant werewolf. Can you come deal with this? And like we just get like a quiet shot of like pushing a werewolf through a portal, sits back down with a hot dog. Thanks, Jimmy. I really needed that. Fuck.
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love
That like
so
we
much.
pull instead we pull on the Jimmy is always in trouble.
It's he
yeah.
specifically strategically gets into trouble in moments that he needs to pull Clark out of a difficult situation. Oh God, I accidentally grew 30 feet tall. Can you come shrink me? Hey buddy, you good? Did you need the out there?
And then like pulling on my like I work in a real newsroom which shall not be named in this stream, but like the thing like I often like sit there thinking is like I watch the news, like I don't watch the news when I'm home, but when I'm at work, I sit in front of a quad screen that has CNN, Fox News, and NBC with one square that I can change out to whatever I need it to be. And I sit there going like, why are we going to the Pentagon correspondent for the fifth time this hour? Why are we going to the Pentagon correspondent for the fifth time this hour? Like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we going to this reporter when she has like shit ass opinions on things? And like, I imagine that Superman is like talking to Jimmy Olsen and he's doing the thing that like I always do, not to be like I'm Superman, but I just think that like working in journalism is kind of like that, where like he's sitting there and he's being like, why do we care about what the Pentagon thinks? Why do why? And Jimmy's like, do you think they weren't gonna care? And
Yeah.
he was like, but it's the people's money. Like, shouldn't we care about what the people think? And Jimmy's like,
did you take a vote?
Yeah, like
yeah.
And he's like, I think you did the right thing, but also like, what the hell did you think was gonna happen? Do you know what I mean? And he's like, you know, like I make bad choices all the time, like summoning this werewolf, but like I kind of always know that like I'm gonna eat it. One of these days. Like, shouldn't you should have like the same. How can you have worked in news for this long and not kind of like gotten it? You know? And I think that this is like a real thing, and it's not like dunking on Clark as an idealist, because like you have to have idealists. It is actually like dunking on the way that news eats your soul. Like
right.
Oh yeah.
And it's really not even like Jimmy Olsen being like mean or Jimmy Olsen like being overly pessimistic. He's just like, people who work in news suck.
Yeah.
And he's like we both work in it because we kind of believe in it, but like you gotta remember, like you can't have you just cannot have a positive view of people who work in news because they're all assholes. Except like Yumi and Lois.
I kind of feel like this is a moment this is a pivotal growth, like change moment for both Superman and like a key moment for us, I think, to like kick our antagonist of the military death cult into high gear. And I admittedly I want a superhero comic it a little bit. I feel like this is a moment for the military to make the weapon, to make the living weapon that will destroy Superman. Like that, this is the moment. Like he's dismantled the nukes. We built new. Like I almost envision. A little bit of a anybody ever seen Burn After Reading the
Yes
Coen Brothers movie? You know the J.K. Simmons is the director of the FBI or CIA, where there's just the like, I don't fucking know, Burn, like get him out of here. Did we learn anything? No, great. I think there's a little bit of that where it's like Superman dismantled the nukes. Yeah, well, we did build new nukes. All right, well, he can't do that again though. We need to like build a living weapon or something, create a monster or some shit. I don't know. You tell me, but like, get him to stop doing that. It's expensive.
No, that's it. I think they don't build a living monster. I think that's when the U.S. military opens up a box and it's a bunch of glowing green bullets that are
that's good.
A bunch of magazines, you know.
That's really good. I like that.
Yeah, and I think that like to play again with like we're really grounding it in our like current political situation, which I love, and I'm glad that we're doing that. And like I think what it is it's like the death squads. You know, it is like this. It is like the police scorpion squads, which are like, if you don't know what they are, they're the special police task forces that are used to quote unquote seize guns, but in most neighborhoods, they're the number one killers of non-white people. And a lot, I have a really long running argument with my family about, I don't believe in gun control because in America, gun control always equates to scorpion squads. And I don't believe in gun control because I don't believe we can trust our government to not use gun control as an excuse to kill people. And that doesn't mean that like I want guns on this ground. Like I'm the person here who's like, we should actually, like, every AK-47 should be melted down. But like, there is a question of like, how do we do that, right? In this world. And like, you know, I think we see like a squad getting formed, you know, like picking the best of the best. We see their like flak jackets and they have the little Punisher symbols on them and the little like black and white American flags. And they have like a pat, like a death patch that is like, I don't know. And this is really disgusting and like content warning for like police brutality and like the real ways the police officers work, but police officers get challenge coins when they kill people. And like you see them putting a patch on their armor that is like Superman, like a dead rat in a Superman costume.
Okay,
and like you see them pulling out the kryptonite bullets, and it is like everything we see now except like coated in kryptonite.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the next time that Clark goes outside and he's Superman and he's saving a cat from a tree, they drone strike.
Oh
yeah.
Ooh. Jesus Christ. So it's like we take one of the quiet moments of Superman and now he's not even allowed to be a quiet hero anymore.
Yeah.
Because he's crossed the Rubicon, you know.
Yeah.
And I like this as a that gives us that second moment of like, that gives us that second conversation in a really interesting context where it's Lex being like, the fuck haven't you succeeded yet? And Clark is like, because they shot a drone strike of kryptonite at me. What was I supposed to do? And he's like, tear it down.
It's like, I tried that, it didn't work.
Well, you know what happens
is didn't work this time.
He has a kryptonite bullet in him, and he goes to fucking Lex Luthor because who knows how to handle fucking kryptonite? Like Lex Luthor shot him with a kryptonite bullet enough that Lex Luthor knows how to extract a kryptonite bullet.
That's really fun, actually. I really quick, just before we move on from that scene, I just want to establish, like, I think this should also be one of our big action sequences. So it's like,
the drone strike hits.
It's also
rushing him.
Superman's trying to save civilians. Like, I think the idea that like this death squad doesn't care about the people that are around in this kind of small neighborhood that he's a part of. So he's trying to save people. That's probably why he takes bullets instead of dodging them, because they're actually lethal to him. Like this, we don't need to go through the whole thing, but I like the idea that we establish like another.
That's a big action scene, and the character beat that I want to establish is that like he's got the bullet in him, he's bleeding out, he is dying, and he does two things. He goes to Luthor, but first he goes to Lois, and he's like, I need you to give me a ride. And so because I do want at least a momentary Lois Lex interaction of Lois being like, wait, I guess that's my question, is like, where is Lois and how do Lois and Lex relate to one another at this point in the story? Just because I think that's a fun character dynamic, and I want to see how it bakes into the story that we've been telling.
I think they snipe at each other, but in that way where it's like, also, they're both married to Superman.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Superman going to Lex to get the bullet taken out of him, and Lois calling Lex to see how he's doing, and Superman's like, "You have Lex's phone number?" And she's like, "I don't ever use it, but like, of course I need it. Like, what if I need to check in on you? And like, you're not picking up your phone because you're off being Superman. Like, and like Lex always knows where you are. Like,
I do have a global surveillance network that's really exclusively focused on following Superman.
Yeah.
She's dead, right? For the record.
For the record.
It's like they have one of those polycules that doesn't have a polycule group chat, but they do have like a polycule code of honor. Like,
Oh
Yeah,
my god.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's fucking great. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. And that's a great context for that second story of like you're Superman, like you're Superman. Go be Superman, and assume like there's almost a so here's my big pitch, because I think that this is actually this is a really good, I think, impetus moment.
Mhm.
I think that Lois and Lex being in the room together is the thing that would get Superman to connect the dots and be like, oh, the military's the villain and I got to go deal with that. It is the two, like, because I think there is a certain kind of because I think the dynamic that I want to add is that like there is a certain kind of sniping but on a similar wavelength personality that like they might not like each other, they might bicker, but like you get them into a room and they are like, it's the heartbreaking worst person you know makes a great point of them just bouncing ideas back and forth, and like every time Clark says a thing, it's here's how I want to frame it. It is Clark, without even realizing it, in the way that you talk to people that you've known for years and decades, and has ways of saying things to get not the reaction that he wants, but like he knows how someone is going to react to something because they've been in his life for 10 years. In the same way that Lois knows that he's not actually going to finish the deck, he
Yeah.
knows that if he says something to Lois, she will respond in a specific way.
Mhm.
In the same way that he has that same dynamic with Lex. But when they're in the room together, Lois catches the thing that he says to Lex to get a specific response, and Lex catches the thing that he says to Lois to get a specific response. And together, there's this moment where there's this like this did we become best friends moment where they're just both like, no, yeah, the bad guy's like, don't give me that. He's trying to give you. You see that he's trying to give you that, right? And
Exactly, yeah.
don't encourage me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I really love that. I like the idea that like Superman is like is almost like trying to convince himself
Yeah.
that like no, like I don't need to, like it's not the system, or it's not the military or something like that, or and then they kind of like refute every point and
Yeah.
doing the thing like, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, no, but Lois, you always say this, and
Lex is like,
Luthor's
yeah,
like,
that's a bad argument.
that's a bit, yeah, like what the fuck are you saying? You know?
Yeah, it's I can really imagine like Clark going, well, the like, oh, it's a supervillain taking over the military. Like,
yeah, that's what I
and, like,
love that.
and being like,
It's
or,
this
like,
one guy.
yeah, like, and the way that like I legitimately know people who are like Kissinger is evil, but the military is fine, you know,
Right.
and it is like when you come from a superhero mindset where like oftentimes it is one person's problem, like, and he's just like, well, it's the guy who's running the squad, or it's the guy who ordered it, or it's like, and Lex and Lois are like, no.
Yeah.
No. Honey,
Yeah.
honey, I love you, but no.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
I
Lex saying that.
I think, yeah. I think a way also to like do that as well is to have like Superman be like, Lex, can you look up who blah blah blah? And Lex just
Yeah.
pulls it up and it's this random. And he's like, okay, but and Lex is like, no, this is just a guy. Like, and Lois like explains like there's just a guy who's just doing his job.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's all of them.
Yeah.
There's something, there's maybe like a nice thing. It's almost like teaching the audience, but it's like,
Yeah.
like Superman's like, all right, so if I take out this guy, and then Lex or Lois is all like, no, and then just pulls up the order of
Yeah.
like, it's like, yeah, no, but then this guy will show up, and it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll take out that guy. It's like, no, it's like, Clark, you're not getting it, you know, like there's always another guy.
Yeah.
That's great. That this is, and so like I yeah, that's good. So like, what is the beat? What's the next beat? Where do we go
Well,
from here?
I mean, I really love the beat of like Superman and Lex literally trading. like literally trading responsibilities.
Yeah.
And Lex being like,
Ooh.
okay, I'm gonna take on, like, I'm going to be the superhero. I'm gonna get in my weird green and purple suit, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna take down the like Death Squad, and you're gonna be Clark Kent for a while, and
Clark Kent goes to Washington.
Clark Kent goes to
Actually,
like, Clark.
No, go.
No, actually, I want to just loop back and do like one little plot thing, which is that if we're also grounding this in the current moment, right around the start of the story, Superman got laid off from his news job.
Oh fuck!
And I mean, like after the nuke stuff, but like he's like on medical leave, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Well, you're on medical leave, just don't come back, so like we don't have the money to pay you." And what it happens is like Lex is like, "Okay, I'm gonna fund you to do like 6 months journalist work, like journalistic,
Mhm.
like I'm gonna give you a 6-month like genius grant because he's that rich."
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
And
That's
then
really
it's and
good.
it's like okay, Lex gets to go be
God
Superman for a
bit,
while,
Yeah.
and like Superman gets Lex's money and gets to go be Clark Kent with money for a little
And
bit.
Yeah.
like there's a fairly recent Justice League arc in the comics that did a thing that I think is really wonderful, which is like Lex, for like a crisis event, like they were solving a thing, Lex like had to step up and be a hero, but like the visual that stuck with me from it is like Lex's kind of classic robot armor suit, but he has put the S on it to be like, if I gotta be this guy, I gotta have the S on it.
Yeah.
And I kind of imagine like Lex like rolls out the suit and everyone is very confused, and Lex is like, yeah, but this is gonna piss a lot of people off, and that's gonna be very satisfying to me personally.
Yeah.
And it is the Superman suit, but it's in the ugly ass green and
Green.
purple.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. Yeah.
And like it's like that, and it's that horrible, it is leaning into the worst trends of like modern superhero comic book or superhero movie costume design, where everything is kind of like armor and
Yeah.
metallic. Like that is Lex's suit, and he's just like got the S on it, but it's like the carved metal S, and he's like, this is my suit. It's gonna make a lot of people very mad seeing me in that S, and I'm going to live for that.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. I like I'm kind of liking the idea that like Lex is also like Superman is now a liability to the public, like a threat. Like if you show
Yeah.
up, this death squad is going to hurt people.
Yeah.
You need to
Yeah.
stop being Superman.
And that's sort of what pushes him to do the Clark stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like I can be like, you know, I can be Superman. Because I'm not,
because I'm Lex Luthor, noted evil scientist.
Exactly,
evil scientist with a love of death race.
like people
Yeah.
see me, they run in the other direction. People see you, they congregate, you know.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can do good without the collateral.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so what's Clark's journey? He spends time on an oil rig. It's Zack Snyder all over.
Yep. Spends time on an oil rig. He chooses not to save a bus full of children.
If modern cinema is to be believed, Alaska is populated by nothing but people trying to escape their past.
Okay, so here's the thing. I've met a number of people from Alaska or who moved to Alaska, and a bunch of them have described a sort of code within Alaska that you just don't ask people why they're in Alaska.
Oh my god.
That it's like sort of a cultural thing. But it's like, no, you came to Alaska for a reason, and you're here now, and that's like.
Oh god.
So I will defend Zack Snyder for a moment.
So happy.
That's very funny.
That's so fucking funny.
Well, what is like the thing that he's spending the 6 months doing? You know,
I mean, again, like this is aspirational fantasy, right? Like, and there are moments where we accept that the thing that like maybe would like that we accept that the fantastical thing will happen for the sake of being able to show us a world in which the fantastical thing happens.
Yeah, Superman can't solve systemic issues in the length of a movie generally.
And so like in my this is my way of saying I think that he like exposes a bunch of he runs a like he exposes a bunch of shit, and we get to see like a sequence of Clark Kent doing, journalistic investigating and pulling things up, exposes a bunch of shit, and like doesn't necessarily like get people ousted because that is too easy for the narrative, but like kind of like I think does a like there's like a radicalizing element. So I think it's like the next beat is like through the way of like expose journalism.
I think it was Rufus talking about him radicalizing the 70%. That I think the idea of Clark does all of this stuff and presents it to like people who are already doing the work.
Yeah.
And it's like, let me help you build an enduring movement. Like, let me like what can I publicize what for you? Like, I have all these resources. Like,
let me. I think that's great. And then like the idea, the other half of that, and I think like the other part of that is like we then get we initially get Luthor, like we get an action scene of Luthor just like dismantling one of these kill squads because he's like, I'm Lex fucking Luthor. You think I'm afraid of a kryptonite bullet? Eat shit. Who do you think gave you those kryptonite bullets?
Like fun fact about kryptonite, much more brittle than actual metal, you fucks.
The satisfying thing of like Luthor pushing a button and watching a bunch of guns like explode and melt in people's hands, if he's like, who do you think had the contract to make you those things? That's me. I'm the villain that gave you those.
I think this is actually,
you're a bunch of hacks.
I think like when we go back to like Clark doing his like journalistic thing, is I think this is can also be a moment where he can really pull on the Ma and Pop Kent thing. And have him like literally going to like people's houses and like being like, well, tell me how your son was radicalized, and like doing the kind of like all shucks, like I might be 6'5" and built like a motherfucker, but like little old ladies are gonna pour their heart out to him. And like maybe even getting like conversations on record from like the families of military officials, that like have never, that like, and kind of like the superpower, like I think that like what I want is like a sequence that shows his two twin superpowers, which is like one, his actual fucking superpowers, him like using his like X-ray vision and and like super hearing. He can't publish anything he doesn't have proof of, but like getting to be like, oh, I need to listen more to this person, or like I need to track down this person because I've heard them had this conversation. But then the other superpower being just being a good middle American guy, like just being from Indiana, like that's his other superpower.
And like I think this is also a really good opportunity to do what I think is another really great thing for him, like a really great beat, which is, publishing this information is putting people in direct danger, right? And I think that we see an instance of this happening where like somebody goes on record and somebody shows up to disappear them, and what should happen, but Superman, shows up, takes beats them down, stops this person very directly, and sends a clear and bluntly well broadcasted message of like, if you come for a person who was speaking the truth about a systemic injustice, there will be a Kryptonian god figure to hold you in the sky until you pass out from fear.
I want to push this into Adira. You were like, Superman's greatest villain is that he can't be. He's only one guy. I like to think that this also is him overcoming that. So like him spreading the news, making this happen. Like he has now been like, I have people around. I don't have like a super family, but the people are now smaller. Superman. And like specifically like Jeff, I like the idea that he goes around, he saves people, sure. But as he does this, he can't save everyone.
Right.
But then communities like save journalists, save these people. It's like we maybe have a scene of like there's like a bunch of these happening all across the country, and Superman shows up at a few doorsteps and stops people from like, disappearing, folks that are in the news or folks that are, in the sightline. But then also you see other people show up. It's like somebody kicks open a door and it's like several people in a community. They're like already protecting them. Or,
I think what it is, I think
like
it's a
Jimmy
gradient.
Olsen.
Yeah, like I think it's a gradient, right? Like the first thing we see is like Superman do it. And then we see like Batman and the Robins do it.
Yeah,
and then we see like Jimmy Olsen and Lois do it. And then we see like somebody who we don't fucking know who
we have
they
no
are
idea
do it. And then we see like kids stopping other kids from like we see like a high school students driving a military recruiter out if they're in high school. And the idea is that like you start with Superman and you have to go through Batman and you have to go through like Wonder Woman and you have to go through like the people who are closest to him. But then like by the time you're on the fifth or sixth time, it's just people who are like, well, if Lois Lane can fight crime, why can't I fight crime?
Yeah.
And then it's being like, well, if Joe Schmo from down the street can fight crime, why can't I fight crime? And except in this, it's wage theft and military industrialism.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not like petty crime.
That's great. That's and I think that like the idea that we see that like all building, and that is like the thing, the visual that I get, because I am not immune to blatant fan service and to emotional pandering. I fucking love when art is a bunch of people in like when art things in Superman comics is a bunch of shots of people doing good and they're wearing a Superman logo, or are they?
Yeah.
That shit gets me choked up in a heartbeat. And so like the idea that you see people play, and it, in this context, it is very specifically like a countercultural, a counter-establishment thing of like, this is not a thing you buy, this is a thing that you make. And we see these like very handmade logos that are like, I'm stepping up to defend my neighborhood. Like if our block needs a Superman, I'm going to be the Superman, and I'm going to like kick out the cops that are trying to, like hassle.
It's like people are like, there's like little street ruffians who are like slapping Supermans on top of like Blue Lives Matter, like, or like thin blue lines and shit like that.
My thought for sort of like the introduction of that into all of this is like you have like some kids like spray painting the S somewhere.
They turn a fucking swastika into like an S, and they're like, no, fuck you, this is not your turf.
Yeah, and I, like, just to be a little bit goofy and like lean into like the superhero thing, like we see like Batman's suit, but it's in the Superman colors with the Superman, and then we see like the Robins, and they're all like little Superman colored Robins. The costumes are like the exact same shape; they're just like a different color. And then you see the like, you see like, I don't know, like another superhero, like the Flash, but he looks like Superman. You know what I mean? And then like you see like it just like it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it like the importance, like Superman, the symbol of hope, actually like does its thing. Right? Like it becomes actually a full symbol.
I was like walking through like what is the final miracle of the film, for lack of a better way to put it, and I think it is ultimately that like this time he dismantles the nukes, and like there is a mob of people around him as he does it, and like we get a whole like the climax of the film, I think in my head is very much like the same way that we saw him going to dismantle a nuke earlier, but like this time it is like shot as an entire sequence of like, there are people there to shut off the surveillance cameras. There are people there who like go up and steal the guns from the security guards. Like there is like an entire movement coordinated.
Or like there are security guys who throw their guns down, like take their uniform off and take a shirt from somebody else.
I was gonna
like,
say,
is it too much to do? Like he's like, instead of him like taking bullets and stuff, it's like there's a ring of people like protecting Superman with their bodies, and then that like causes guards to be like, I can't fucking shoot, that's my cousin, you know, like I gotta take it up.
Or like a visual that is genuinely like so important to me is like the fucking like there's a security guard that does the fucking shirt pull, and it's
Oh
like,
my God.
like, I've been a Superman the whole time. Like, we get the shirt pull visual, and like it is seen as a symbol of like actually like I took this position and I settled this in so that at this moment I could undermine it. And so like we see the dismantling of the nukes, and rather than it being Superman doing a thing, it is Superman being the person in a position to do this particular superhuman thing, but only because he is backed by an entire community and a global movement of people, you know, in a position to stand by him as we witness this dismantling occur.
Yeah. And I think that there also has to be like, you know, like I think if we're doing the miracle of hope, right? Like, and if we're really leaning into like, well, what does like feel like a miracle? And like the thing that like I want is that we have two weapons manufacturers like in the story, right? We have you know both Bruce and Lex are weapons manufacturers. That's what they are.
Yeah.
And like to have a moment where like I think that like this moment at the like the nuclear facility is like the real big climax, but in the leading up to that, like you have a joint press conference from Lex Luthor and
Bruce Wayne
Bruce Wayne, not Batman, who are like, and actually anybody who fulfills contracts for the U.S. government is never going to get any money from the two biggest companies in the United States, like blacklist. Like and actually we're going to default on all of our contracts and return all of the money that hasn't already been spent, and like because we're that fucking rich we can do that. And like there's almost like this like backdoor scene of like Bruce being like, I don't like you and you don't like me, and we've competed for every contract we've ever had for the last 30 years, but actually it's better to be competing over things that matter than like competing over death squads, right? Like I'd rather beat you at like the science decathlon.
That's exactly
than like who.
Which
I mean,
which one of us can make the most like eco-friendly stove, right? Or like, who can make the most toilets, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I think you can even throw a little sort of like backstory thing and have like the two of them went to college together or something. And like we're competing for college valedictorian or something.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
That's great.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
I really like that.
Because also having Lex Luthor be valedictorian and Batman not is funny, and I like doing that to people because people would be upset by that.
And I think so. I guess let me throw out. I think like what's the ending? What is the fine? After we see all of this unfold, like where do we end the story? Where do we land the Superman?
I want to pitch two separate ones, and feel free to reject both.
Yeah.
I want either, like we just see a very nice shot of Superman doing a nice thing, right? Like it is like he can just be a hero for the mundane problems, kind of, or maybe not even the most. It's like he stops like a bodega robbery, right? Like it's like a small thing. There's still systemic issues, like people are still robbing places, but you know, like he stops in, you know, or the other one. So we kind of like my one pitch is small. The other pitch is, and then like Darkseid shows up, or you know, some like nonsense where it's like, oh, I still need to be the big guy. Like oh shit.
I mean, Jeff Stormer answer. Why not both?
I have a wildly different pitch for the last scene. Him and Lois are eating dinner at their house with the two of them, Lex Luthor, Bruce Wayne, and Jimmy Olsen. Maybe also the Kent parents too. They're all eating dinner.
It's a little party. They have a dinner party. Yeah,
they're having a little dinner party. Everybody leaves. The two of them watch TV. They
go Christmas.
Up to bed, and they turn the lights out, and it zooms out, and the deck is built.
Oh, that's good.
I have a post-credit scene, which I think is like
which is necessary in this climate.
Like, like, well, we gotta have a post-credit scene, which is like, I don't really think it's important for the story. Like, I much prefer the sort of like, well, why don't we have all three of like, like the last scene is the dinner party, and then like we see him like climbing out the window to go fight Darkseid, and he has to like jump down on the deck, and like we see it finished, and then. But like the last scene I want is like, I actually think like the thing that this movie is it's the payoff to the like the S is the symbol of hope, right?
Yeah.
And what I want is like another survivor of Krypton to like in the post-credit scene to like show up on Earth and see that like every surface of America is covered with that.
I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, first off, crucial detail, jumps down onto the deck, and we get the dramatic Superman landing pose, but he does break the deck, so we do get a brief shot of Lois. Oh God!
You just finished it.
But yeah, like it's gotta be. I mean, it's gotta be Supergirl, right? It's gotta be It's gotta be his cousin. It's gotta be his cousin who lands as an adult and looks around, and people are just wearing the S, and it's like a whole thing of. And then we can get. Then maybe we even get the thing of like. So okay, can I throw something out?
Sure.
Obviously,
because there's an image that we haven't. There's
two
images
Jeff.
that we. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
There's two images that we haven't pulled on very specifically that I really want to make sure I include. Post credits. We get Clark looking at the Earth, right? We get like this is sort of a contented Clark floating, like looking at this and kind of like acknowledging everything that has occurred. That's when he sees what looks like an asteroid, but like we get a close-up shot and we see that it is a rocket exactly like the one that carried him to Earth is hurtling towards the ground. It lands in the middle of a busy city, and like an adult woman steps out and looks around and is like, what is this? Sees a bunch of people in the Superman with the Superman logo looking around, just like at and then Superman kind of like doing the fist fly, like comes down, touches down, and just goes, we have a lot of things to talk about.
Oh yeah,
perfect.
That's very nice. Actually, what I thought you were gonna say is that she touchdowns, she walks out, I'm a fully formed human, and then a son and his father goes, you need a secret identity. Also, you should be super
woman.
Superwoman. Yeah.
Hey, heads up, by the way. A lot of shit's unfold.
I really like that. Something like this isn't a perfect movie. We can't talk about everything. Something I wanted to. I was like, I like where we're going. I didn't want to break, but like, is this also still a Superman that's very U.S. centric? Right.
Yes.
And like, I love the idea of like Superman being like, again, we haven't talked about it. It's like Superman as like a U.S. citizen, and then he's all like, actually, I should help the world, and like, what does that mean? But that's not what this is about necessarily. But I like that this kind of opens it up to that a little bit more. Like now we talk about the fact that Superman, is an immigrant or something like that, right? Like, it's what does it mean to have to. So he's kind of figured out the U.S., but like there's other problems around the world. There's other galactic problems. Like,
I think that what this is that this is it's year 35 for Superman, for like this character. But like, this is the moment that gets us like the Spider-Verse like version of Superman, where like we cut we don't cut. So I think that the movie should end. This would
end there,
But like the sequel is like we open it up and there's like a Superman India and like a Superman.
There is very canonically one of the things they recently added in the comics that I think like adds a lot of potential to this is there is the Superman of China. Like there is like and I think that like to Rufus your point, like a sequel story to this that is Superman like as anchored in this this like mentorship to his cousin who is like an adult. We get to see that like the natural extension of Superman, like of the Superman symbol being like a symbol for hope, is that like superpowered individuals as they are emerging are going to wear that S because it is a universal symbol of hope. And so suddenly it is, to your point, Rufus, it is like now Superman is fully the dad figure of like, I got an adult cousin who has just shown up. There is a Superman of India, of China. Like there are these other people who are maybe not like have no ties to the Kryptonian stuff, but
side.
like I'm wearing the S because I'm a super figure, and Superman kind of has to address the fact of like, we need to, like, there has to be a code of ethics that comes with this. Like you have to have like that, what you're wearing is a commitment, and then something comes from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And then you can also have Superman have a little baby.
And he's got a little baby Superman.
I love, like, the Super Sons are a thing that also are new, and I really love them a lot.
So one thing we never really talked about, who plays Superman?
Oh Lord. Do we give Henry Cavill a second shot? Give him a Superman story that he could actually do? I'm really bad at casting, so I will.
I've had Superman, please.
I have a slightly radical one.
Go for it.
So I have two, which one is Dave Bautista.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm listening.
And the other one is Winston Duke.
I was gonna say William Jackson Harper, but he might be even a little young. Like, but
William Jackson Harper plays Lex.
That's good. That's fucking real good. Shit.
Oh.
Well,
yeah, that's
this guy's a little bit old. This guy's a little bit old for this. But like, if Winston Duke is playing Superman, then what's his name? I fucking forgot his last name. Charlie Kelly.
Charlie Day.
Yeah. Charlie Day is playing Jimmy Olsen.
That's great. Oh! That's really good. That's fucking very good. Is the thing.
Yeah.
And you have this like backstory of like, you see Winston Duke and Charlie Day together, and you're like, these people should never be friends. They should not exist in the same universe as each other. But they grew up in the same like shit tiny high school, and like we're the two fucking like weird queer coded freaks. And they were like, okay, actually, I think we're just in this for life.
Yeah, I think that we're ride or die.
Oh, that's so fun.
That's so good. Is the thing. Oh my god, and I think that's game. This has been fantastic. Thank you all three of you for joining us. This was the best. I could not be happier.
We've made a Superman story that would make so many people mad.
Oh, like, it would piss off so many people, and I would fucking live. I am Lex Luthor putting on the Superman suit of like, this is gonna make a lot of people mad, and I'm thrilled.
Well, I think this is the thing that we lost from the like Marvel editors punching Nazis days. Yeah, is that the original Marvel writers were trolls.
Yeah, like, absolutely.
We've lost that. We've lost our heritage.
Like, I think so often about the sublime. I think so often about the sublime badassness of Jack Kirby getting a phone call in the Marvel bullpen from straight up literal Nazis who are like, we are Nazis. We are in your lobby. We want you to come downstairs so that we can show you what we think of you and your Captain America. And Jack Kirby's response was, cool, I'll be down in 30 seconds. And then went, yeah, they were gone by the time I showed up because they're cowards.
Fuck yeah.
There was another comics writer who used to be part of a group that would just sort of rumble around, and if they ran into Nazis, would just beat them the fuck up.
That's fucking the comics. Like,
yeah, what happened?
This used to be great. Thank you all so much for joining us here on the stream today. This was everything that I wanted to be in.
We didn't even play my game, and that's okay.
I mean, we kind of like every once in a while I was all like, oh, we did that. Nobody took a token, nobody sent a token, but we played the game, you know? Like,
no, this is what the game is. Like, when you play KUBRICK well, what I found happens is that usually the tokens are a way for us to get into the spirit.
Yeah.
And then about halfway through a KUBRICK game, you stop kind of caring.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be that we came in with the energy needed today to like not need that ramp up. Whereas like the tokens are there as a I mean, I think like to have like a game design moment at the end of this super stream, which is like, you know, the basis for um belonging outside of belonging is this idea of like idle dreaming and like shared imaginative play.
Mhm.
And I've always found that really hard when it is about like telling a really detailed story and your moves are about like things that happen.
Mhm.
But when you think about it as like these tokens are a superstructure to lead into a sort of play that we have lost as children, and like to like help ease the transition between a world where we cannot do that kind of shared dreaming into a world where we can. Like that's what the tokens are there for. And like the great thing about like KUBRICK is that when you come in with this kind of energy and when you are just like, okay, let's fucking go, like you don't actually need to play the game. You just need that list of things in front of you.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
that's all you need. If you're doing like a much longer run, not like a 3-hour stream, but like a, you know, a 12 episode show about Dragon Ball, like you need to start with the tokens that you have a run up, you know.
Yeah.
But by
Yeah.
the time that show ends, y'all are not playing KUBRICK, and that's ideal.
We do reach a point where we're just like, let's brainstorm things. And also, Riley, can you make a bracket real quick so that we can we can spend 2 full real life hours seeding a bracket and deciding what the most compelling fights are. Everybody, please go listen to Dragon Ball Uber on Riley Hopkins and Their Amazing Friends.
Yeah.
It's real good, and there is just an episode that is strictly we are going to build a World Fighters tournament. And honestly, I think we build a really great tournament. I think it's got a lot of drama. I think it's got interesting matchups.
Nice.
Thank you all so much. Real quick, I'm gonna have everybody just go one more time. Where can people find you online? Adira, where can people find you online?
Oh yeah, you can find me wherever Adira slatteries are sold. That's generally Twitter and itch, or adiraslattery.com. At Adira Slattery on Twitter, and you can go to adira.itch.io. And I would love if you checked out my games. I have a number of games that are played loosey-goosey, just like we did today. And I have a number of games that also want you to do things like roll dice. Which also you can ignore. You don't have to follow any of the rules. I'm a game designer, not a cop.
You wrote one of my favorite games. Another one of my favorite games ever written, Bad Moon, is on there that we played together. That is, we played it with the moon, which is great. It is a podcast episode that is extremely important to me.
Oh, I'm glad.
Rufus, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Roswell at All Roswell Writes on Twitter, and you can find me at roswellians.itch.io. KUBRICK is there for $10 if you'd like to pick it up. I'd really appreciate that. It's been an expensive month for me, and I don't have any new work out, but I also have a bunch of other things on there. A lot of games that are not as freeform as this, but in the same spirit of like, let's do some weird metatextual shit with the story we're telling. And yeah.
And Vid, where can people find you online?
People can find me online at Viditya Valetti everywhere as well. So you can find me on Twitter primarily, and then you can find my games at vidityavaletti.itch.io. This I also kind of have similar games like this, like A Land Once Magic is kind of a big writer's room game, kind of like this, where eventually you're just kind of asking stuff. And Space Between Stars is the same thing, but then it goes into, if you want to play a game, you can take whatever you make and then play it into a bit more of a thing. But yeah.
All of us have done things like this. It's
all of us,
like Jeff picked a good group of people.
It's almost right.
It's like, are we all comfortable just asking questions and giving answers? Like, are we all very good at that? Actually,
yeah. Uh-huh.
I have assembled a team with a very specific purpose in mind. Yeah, so everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you have not already, please, you can find a link in the chat. You can find a QR code in the middle of the screen. There are links abound. Donate to the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund. It is why we are here today. The links are abound. I encourage you to donate. We have got stretch goals. We have got giveaways. We have got all of the bits and bobbles. But for now, I'm going to throw it over to a waiting screen. I'm going to throw it over to Jeff in the future so that he can check in with the chat and do all of the present Jeff things. And otherwise, I will say good night, everybody, or good afternoon or good morning. I'm not certain when this is going to air. Bye, everybody.
Hi, future Jeff.
Goodbye.